Good morning. I am Jean Leroux. If you don't know me or have not met me, and soon you will meet again or chat again to Nelmary Bradshaw. First of all, apologies that it's taken a short while to get this video done. We've had delays, meetings, calls, emails, and things to prepare. But Nelmary has had something on her heart, not only to present to any court of law who would assist her, but we cannot find one court of law that will assist her. So this ridiculous thing of having victims sit outside the court and making decisions about their lives and their children's lives without them even being there or being allowed in the courtroom needs to come to an end somehow, somewhere, and it is. We had originally had 3 victims who were willing to do this sitting with us. After careful consideration, we have decided not to include them for now. There can always be future episodes and future exposés or whatever you want to call it. It's more important to protect them and their children as they are in different, varied and same dangers at the moment and over the last few years, some up to a decade. Imagine 10 years of people, strangers, telling you what to do and telling you what to do with your kids and telling your kids what to do, and you having no say. What an absolute ridiculous, absurd thing to exist. And if you try and challenge it, question it, interact with it, comply with it, it just kicks you in the teeth over and over. So the only thing that remains for those that have not figured it out is to stop cooperating and resist, challenge, and if necessary, attack it, because it is attacking you. And every law of nature and man and biblical says that you are allowed to use any and all means to defend yourself and your children, or your family, or your friends, or your neighbor, or even just a stranger. Think of the Samaritan in the Bible. And if you don't know what that is, go read about it. And that might be the start of your journey through the Bible. But I do not want to make a bunch of noise now. I'm here for some moral support to guide this if necessary. Maybe ask some questions as Nelmary presents her oral. But this ridiculous thing of victims having no outlet, no voice, no port of call, no anything to have their voice or words heard is absolutely wrong and will not be anymore. This channel will continue to expose all this rot, not only in Kucha, Port Elizabeth, Jeffreys Basin, Francis, Humansdorp especially, but also nationally and internationally. And if you don't know about these things, you really need to start finding out. I have created multiple channels over multiple years with multiple different ways to approach this subject, all with little breadcrumbs of trails leading from one topic to the next, making it kind of easy to follow one topic on the next in a breadcrumb trail type format, so that you can digest it, ingest it, compare it, see how it leads, where it leads and where it comes from. So all you need to do, just like the Bible, is start with one verse and go backwards or forwards or around, and it all will add up and connect. It does. So I want to now turn the camera to Nelmary. I want to allow her all the time that she wants and needs to do whatever she wants, to say whatever she wants and needs about whomever, whatever, and wherever she wants, because that is her right. And then we will see how it goes, and we will see how the other victims feel, and we'll see how we can include them and not include them, because they are living under constant threat and danger of officials and courthouses threatening them with financial fines and imprisonment just for speaking up about the dangers they find themselves and their children in, not created by them, by no means in control of that situation, and they have no say for years and years and years. And all the institutions that we have that are supposed to protect any and all victims, wherever they may come from, whatever the situation may be, are all failing to act on this in multiple cases, multiple victims, multiple years, multiple locations. This is a massive sickness that needs to be confronted hardcore. And it is. But we need to get this out to more people and give our people, our victims, a voice. So that is what we are trying to do. This channel was actually created to try and engage with different role players over time and do it in a more gentle fashion. But this situation has absolutely exploded. And the deeper you dig and the further you go, the more victims and children and younger children and more heinous, ugly, really ugly things you find, with officials doing absolutely nothing effective besides sending emails and forms to fill in and kicking the can down the road. So we're kicking the can back, and we're going to kick it harder and harder and harder. So now, Marie, I'm going to now just turn the camera to you. I'll be here, and we'll see how it goes. I'm not going to take the lead on this per se, and you can do what you like. We'll just engage as we chat as normal, and we'll see how this goes down. There's more than enough professional podcasts online with pretty backgrounds and bookcases full of random books that they haven't read anyway. So the optics are not important for now. I can see me, I can see you, and the sound bar is bipping up and down, and I did a test this morning, so all should be fine. So now Marie Bradshaw. Is that okay? Would you like me to raise it?
No,
okay.
Is that close enough?
Well, you can see the green will become yellow, the yellow will become red. Red is when it's like scratching, and green is when it's fine, yellow is when it's loud. See that? You see that there?
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so last year we started doing some videos, and I developed a habit and routine of starting with reading out of the Bible, and some people understand it, some do not. I did in one of the videos try to explain it a bit better. I'm going to start for us again like that today, and this is the call of Jeremiah, Jeremiah 1, which I always start with. Not because I think I'm some kind of prophet, that's not what's going on here. It's to start with the Word of God, because He breathed life into us, and in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. So we start like that, okay? And we give God the opportunity, and by reading this, I'm saying this is not about me. I'm giving the opportunity, and I'm surrendering, saying, God, Lord Jesus, Holy Spirit, speak through me, and make sure the message that you want to bring out to the people is heard. That's what it's about. It's about me stepping aside completely, because it's not about me, so that the correct message can come across, so that I don't fumble over my words or speak in anger or do anything that is silly or not productive to the situation. It's to get pride out of the way. Okay. So the call of Jeremiah, Jeremiah 1. The word of the Lord came to me, saying, Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Alas, sovereign Lord, I said, I do not know how to speak. I am too young. But the Lord said to me, Do not say, I am too young. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I have put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms, to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. The word of the Lord came to me. What do you see, Jeremiah? I see the branch of an almond tree, I replied. The Lord said to me, You have seen correctly, for I am watching to see that my word is fulfilled. The word of the Lord came to me again. What do you see? I see a pot that is boiling, I answered. It is tilting toward us from the north. The Lord said to me, From the north disaster will be poured out on all who live in the land. I am about to summon all the peoples of the northern kingdoms, declares the Lord. Their kings will come and set up their thrones in the entrance of the gates of Jerusalem. They will come against all her surrounding walls and against all the towns of Judah. I will pronounce my judgments on my people because of their wickedness in forsaking me, in burning incense to other gods, and in worshipping what their hands have made. Get yourself ready, stand up, and say to them whatever I command you. Do not be terrified by them, or I will terrify you before them. Today I have made you a fortified city, an iron pillar, and a bronze wall to stand against the whole land, against the kings of Judah, its officials, its priests, and the people of the land. They will fight against you, but will not overcome you, for I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord. This morning we were reading out of James, and I thought it appropriate, since it speaks about court. And so I thought, firstly, that was a sign that we need to get this interview done today, and secondly, that this needs to be read. So we are in James 2, with the heading of the chapter, Favoritism is Forbidden. My brothers and sisters, believers in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ, must not show favoritism. Suppose a man comes into your meeting wearing a gold ring and fine clothes, and a poor man in filthy old clothes also comes in. If you show special attention to the man wearing the fine clothes and say, Here's a good seat for you, but say to the poor man, You stand there, or sit on the floor by my feet. Have you not discriminated among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts? Listen, my dear brothers and sisters. Has not God chosen those who are poor in the eyes of the world to be rich in faith and to inherit the kingdom he promised those who love him? But you have dishonored the poor. Is it not the rich who are exploiting you? Are they not the ones who are dragging you into court? Are they not the ones who are blaspheming the noble name of him to whom you belong? If you really keep the royal law found in Scripture, love your neighbor as yourself, you are doing right. But if you show favoritism, you sin and are convicted by the law as lawbreakers. For whoever keeps the whole law and yet stumbles at just one point is guilty of breaking all of it. I'm going to skip to verse 12. Speak and act as those who are going to be judged by the law that gives freedom, because judgment without mercy will be shown to anyone who has not been merciful. Mercy triumphs over judgment. Now I'm going to skip to James 3. Taming the tongue. Not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. We all stumble in many ways. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. When we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind. But no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings, who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives, or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. I'm going to stop there, because that is exactly what is going on. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. On that note, 2 points. The justice system is supposed to create order and justice. But what is going on in this country is not order and not justice. And it's born out of envy
and selfish
ambition. Why? Because it comes from corruption. What is the cause of the corruption? Envy and selfish ambition, wanting more while others suffer. Not fairness, not justice. Because you want to gather and keep for yourself and exploit other people. Because you want to climb your way to the top and live in fancy mansions and eat good food and dress nicely and drive expensive cars. And the only way you are getting there is by making victims, by stepping on other people and destroying their lives. That is what my ex-husband is doing, my daughter's father. That is what he's been doing. He found himself a lawyer that makes his livelihood on that principle. He found himself a police captain that makes his livelihood on that principle. And they belong to some sort of little club or secret society, or have loyalty and ties and connections with the same type of people within the justice system. And this is a problem we are not just seeing in Humansdorp and Jeffreys Bay, where this all started. But as you read and research and you speak to other people and you go online and your view becomes bigger, you see that this is a problem across the nation and even in other countries. Because the root of the problem is evil desires.
And good men who do nothing. For whatever reason, fear, surrender, hiding, given up, don't know what to do. It's also driven by a lack of care.
So the initial reason why I wanted to do a video, because we haven't done one in a long time, is because we've been in and out of many court hearings for different court cases at different courts this past year. And we've not given a thorough update where I speak like this for some time, because I was trying to respect the court process and wait and see if any justice will prevail. I am sad to report that absolutely nothing has changed in the last 6 months. Since our very first court date on the 9th of January, there has been the appearance of progress, of people helping, little steps forward. And I often feel like it's on purpose to subdue and calm me and make me feel as if I'm being helped, so that I will stop bothering everyone and stop trying and stop submitting applications and stop emailing and stop calling, because they want me to just feel like, okay, I'm being helped, it's being addressed.
Trust the process, trust the process.
But if you look at the physical evidence around us, absolutely nothing has changed. Maintenance owed to me from 4 years, for which I have a court order,
which was very carefully worked out for all parties concerned, including her piece of shit ex-husband. Everyone was taken into account to make sure everybody was cared for. She needed to feed herself and her baby girl because she worked for him and his father for 10 years. She was reliant on him, and he lives in a multi-million rand house with a trust fund, and they all lived off that. It's fair. She's not looking for money. She even started her own business more than once. She carried 3 jobs at one stage. It's not about the money. It's about being able to care for herself and her daughter, and they use that against her, as in so many cases.
So even though this matter has been in court repeatedly, almost on a monthly basis since January, justice is nowhere to be found. The warrant of execution granted against Mr. Bradshaw for the arrears maintenance has not been enforced by the court. and I will speak now because that was our last court appearance last week. And so I'm going to go into detail about all the matters and all the courts that we've been to and what's been going on so that people can understand. Because the main reason for this is my heart breaks for a mother or a woman like me that enters this system so gullible, so naive, and has to start dealing with attorneys and court clerks,
Snakes.
and magistrates and court proceedings.
Snakes.
And you think that because our law says one thing, there's laws, right? And you think these laws get implemented, that the court is fair and that things work fairly. This is the average person's perception of the justice system. If there's a law that says this and I have an attorney, I will be safe and protected. And my children will be safe and protected. And this is not the case in South Africa. Not at all. And this is what I want to explain. Because people have a misconception. They do not understand what is going on. Because they can't fathom it. They can't comprehend. It doesn't make sense. Because if there's a law that says one thing, how did this happen? And I'm going to explain it to you. So let's start with the maintenance court date that we had. For context, at the beginning of the divorce, for those who don't know, I was completely dependent on my daughter's father because we were married and I was working for him and his family. It was a family business, a family trust, and since he is legally blind and cannot do his own admin in terms of emailing and messaging and receipts and grocery shopping and even all the maintenance on the properties they owned. He cannot drive. He needed to be driven around, assisted to pick out tiles and paint colors, meet with builders, meet with attorneys, view properties to purchase. Someone needs to read over the office of purchase. Someone needs to interview tenants. He was part of the process, but he cannot do these things alone unassisted. And I was asked to assist him so that the family business, the family trust, our interests can grow. Instead of me working for an outside company, bringing in a little bit of money, and then he struggles through this process to run the family trust and the family business effectively. It didn't make sense.
She gave up her profession of specialized childcare.
Yes, before that I worked with special needs children as a play therapist.
And the very small amount that she was paid, she was ordered, instructed, not requested, to pay back to him as her share of their household expenses.
So it was later pointed out to me that I was exploited because I was paid a very small salary, which was mainly just for tax purposes.
Tax deduction purposes.
That's what I was about to say, so that he could get a tax deduction. But then most of that money had to be paid back into his account, the main account, because I had to contribute to the household. And so I was given a few £100 allowance every month. Allowance.
Your wife, the mother of your child, gets a Snoopy allowance. What a piece of crap.
And only that few £100 every month I could do with as I pleased, save it or do something with it. But the main finances was controlled by Mr. Bradshaw, my ex-husband, my daughter's father, and he made all the decisions for him and his father and the family business and trust and me and everything. He did discuss these decisions with his father. But the way Mr. Bradshaw discusses something is by talking and talking and talking and talking until the person agrees with you. It's very subtle, very slow manipulation. That's what it is. Because if the initial response is not what he likes or what he thinks is best, he will carry on and on and on, very controlled, very methodical.
Very psychopathic.
He would sit on the phone with his father for hours every day until slowly he would get the answer that he wanted. Okay, we digress. This is going to be too long if we carry on with this much detail. The point is, I was completely dependent on him. He controlled all the finances and I worked for him and his family. So when I left Mr. Bradshaw, my attorney at the time brought an application to the maintenance court that explained all our finances and the trust finances and everyone's responsibilities and our standard of living in great detail. And so a maintenance order was made for me and my daughter. Now, I was under the impression, as many people are, that if a court order exists, you have to follow it. Otherwise, you get arrested. And the first few months that Mr. Bradshaw paid, he even told me, he was moaning and threatening me, saying that his lawyer, Mr. Heinz Spangenberg, told him he has to pay the maintenance, otherwise he will go to jail. This was July 2022, because the court order was granted in June. So this was July, August, September 2022. He admitted that he would go to jail if he doesn't pay the maintenance. Then he started short paying, and eventually he stopped paying. And I reported it to the Humansdorp court many, many times.
So think about this. He's literally taking the food away from his ex-wife, who he's upset with, obviously, but also his child. You literally stop feeding your child. Does that sound normal or natural? But I digress.
No, that's a valid point. Because now, if you fast forward a few years later, the court, based on the recommendation of the family advocate, granted Mr. Bradshaw primary care as if he is the better parent, when right at the start of the divorce he showed his true colors and everyone refused to see it. Because if you do not pay maintenance, and I cannot pay electricity so that the lights are on and we have warm water, I cannot bath our daughter and keep her clean. I cannot cook for her. I cannot buy food. I cannot drive her to school. I cannot drive her to doctor's appointments. When you withhold maintenance as a father, you withhold care, basic necessities, basic care for your own child. which can be termed as medical negligence, overall negligence, neglect, and child abuse.
And economic gender-based violence.
Because unless someone like my father, Ariel's Opa, or Mr. LaRue stepped in and assisted us, when the money is finished, it's finished. You cannot pay for petrol, pay for groceries, pay electricity, pay rent with nothing. It's impossible.
Well, he solved the petrol problem because he sent someone at night to steal the car. Can you believe that?
So the point is, someone's got to pay for it. And if you cannot find anyone to pay for it, you end up on the street.
Because your neighbours don't care in Jeffreys Bay if you're on the street with your child. Even though they make a big hoo-ha about social services there, who, by the way, are stealing from you, Jeffreys Bay. Your donations, they're stealing it. They're using it.
And so, when you withhold maintenance as a father, you are directly placing your child in danger. That is the very definition of child abuse. Now, how this went ignored and excused for 4 years while we were disputing custody in the divorce, with the family advocate insisting that he is a good father and the better parent, is beyond me. But these are the things that happen, which make no sense, which is not logical. And we will get to that. So, you reported to the police because there's a court order. It becomes criminal when they violate a court order. The police say to you, no, that's not their mandate. You need to go report it to court. So I go to court. Now understand that if you live in Jeffreys Bay, the court is in Humansdorp. It's not in the same town. It's far away. If maintenance is already withheld and you're already struggling just to feed yourself, pay rent, pay electricity, and get your daughter to school,
trying to find a job, working at a job,
how must you then drive with money you don't have and petrol you don't have all the way to Humansdorp Court
and a car that's been stolen
to go ask for assistance with maintenance that is withheld? Do you understand how difficult that is? And now I had help. I had friends driving me to court. I had my parents visiting every now and again that would take me to court. I had assistance. Some mothers do not have assistance. They must pay taxi fare from whichever suburb they live in to get to court. When the maintenance is being withheld, and that's the very problem that they're having, they don't have money. So now to report the maintenance that's being withheld and to get assistance to actually get that money, you have to spend money. And I can assure you what happens in a lot of situations is that mothers simply don't have the petrol money to even go to court. And so many fathers are simply not paying maintenance and nothing is happening to them. And these mothers are struggling because to get help, you have to first spend money and get to court. So just think about this, because I feel like very few people think realistically and practically about what they are asking people to do for how to get help. It doesn't make sense, it's not plausible, it's not practical, it's not doable. And then when you go, you face a situation
where a cheeky fat bitch sitting in a stinking office with this snake slimy lawyer standing there, stinking up the place, sweating with flies around his head, condescends towards you, saying you should have a job, pay your own way, of gaan laai die kind by haar pa af, daar's kos in sy huis. You see the self-control you have to exercise not to reach across that desk and smash a potato.
So the first thing you have to realize is once you get to court, if you can make it there, there's extremely long queues. You might get helped, you might not. If you get helped, you get told to fill in a form and that you will be contacted with a court date. So you don't get helped immediately. When you don't have money for food, you have to feed your child because there's a maintenance order. They don't assist you immediately.
Minimum waiting time in Humansdorp, 8 weeks. 8 weeks.
So again, this makes no sense because there's a court order. It should just be automatically enforced. You should not be made to wait. And not made to wait for a court date and not made to wait for an investigation. Because the maintenance officer said to me she cannot make him pay with money he doesn't have. Now, as I understand it, that is not your job to decide whether he has the money or not. And I also don't think it was legal for you to lie to me and say you have to investigate it. Because the court order was granted, which means his finances was thoroughly investigated and a magistrate found him to be able to afford the amount that she allocated.
And this is not my first rodeo, so I can tell you, Jade Bradshaw, that your ex-wife took you into account very carefully and only claimed what was necessary to make ends meet. What you have access to and what she could have claimed are chalk and cheese, my friend. But you're going to find that out soon.
So, for a court clerk at the maintenance office to tell me that she cannot enforce the order because she cannot make him pay with money he doesn't have makes no sense, because again, that order did not fall out of the sky. It was made by a magistrate, therefore it needs to be enforced. And they operated under the guise of needing to investigate. And every time I came back on the court dates that they gave me, that same maintenance officer or maintenance clerk, I'm not sure exactly what her title is,
cheeky fat bitch,
would either not be there even though she told me to come back on that date, or if she was there, she would told me if I can't afford to feed my daughter, I must take her to her father's house, which is not what the court order says. Or she said to me, they're not done with the investigations, I have to come back again in 8 weeks. Now, personally, as I understand it, I don't believe any of that was legal. Because a court order should simply be enforced. You are not a magistrate.
Imagine telling a mommy to take a little girl to a place of danger which she's trying to evade legally for the safety of her and her child. And you sit there behind your desk sipping on your whatever you're sipping on with snot on your one nostril and tell her to go drop her child off at the place of danger which she's trying to evade, asking you for help, to be a person. Something is wrong with you, Lolly. Something is wrong with you. You're working with people and children and lives. You should not be, but you are. And your colleagues fucking hate you. Stupid cow.
So the point is, the treatment we received and absolutely no court date given in about 2 to 3 years after following up repeatedly is not legal. Okay, that's not how it works. So I can make allegations or you can make your own assumptions, but you have to 1 plus 1 here, because if the law says that court orders need to be enforced, otherwise the person gets arrested, or you at least need to be given a court date so that you can speak to an actual magistrate, not the court clerk or maintenance officer. You need to be given a court date so that the magistrate can hear what's going on and address the matter, since she gave the order. If you are repeatedly withheld out of court and not given a court date for 2 to 3 years, that is not legal. So what is going on here? The only logical assumption that can be made is that there was bribery and corruption, because otherwise due process, legal process would be followed. If you can come up with any other explanation, be my guest, message us, suggest something. What would the other explanation be?
And in the meantime, every other application, process and demand made from the other side is processed, complied with, accommodated and enforced. Every single other, even emergency applications, granted without the mother being present. And when the mom wants to explain dispute or make her own application, it's impossible. That is one epitome definition of corruption and an unfair balance of scale. Go read Proverbs. What's coming your way?
Okay, so I want to try and stick to a timeline and an order, because I'm trying to get to what's going on currently with the maintenance in what court. And so I just wanted to give the background. So I just want to pause where we are in terms of the non-assistance, which was illegal at Humansdorp Court, and the fact that it was reported to the court manager multiple times. He assisted me to fill in complaint forms and make affidavits and even stamp them at the police as if I'm being assisted. Okay? Because filling in a complaint form and making an affidavit at the police is now going to make something better. You feel like, okay, someone's listening, someone's helping. It didn't change anything. Okay? This was part of the process that's been going on for 4 years, where they make you think that you are being helped, so that you will go home and just
Shush.
Yeah, not bother them for a little while.
Can you name one place that you have been in the last year or 4 years, let's be fair, in the last 4 years, more than 100 times? Write it in the comments. Besides school, if you have children, and your house, and maybe the shopping center. Can you name one place that you have been more than 100 times in the last 4 years? Think about that.
Okay, I want to make one more point, and then I just want to pause for a body break.
Okay.
Due to this going on at Humansdorp Court and getting no assistance, eventually we were told to go see a prosecutor, one of the senior or head prosecutors, and we sat down with a meeting with this person, a meeting for which I was charged by an attorney. And this prosecutor assured me that he would be taking the matter to court, criminal court, to prosecute Mr. Bradshaw. Again, they created the perception of assisting me, so that for a few days, weeks, months, I would wait to hear back, and I would stop pushing and stop bothering everyone.
Because she can't feed her and her baby girl.
And again, it didn't happen. That person, that prosecutor, doesn't remember me. If he does, he's faking, because I've seen him and I've been to his office again. And when I tried to follow up, he had no idea who I was or pretended not to know me. And he did not keep his word, and he did not assist, and he did not prosecute, and that matter never went to court. I'm going to stop there because I desperately need just a body break, and then we're going to carry on with where things are now and how they got to where they are. Okay, is it on again?
Yep. Cool.
Can carry on. Okay. So, what eventually happened was, we moved out of Jeffreys Bay to a farm. Now, at the time, I did have a pro bono attorney assisting me with the divorce for a short period. And I'm not sure why she did not advise me of this, or if she did just not realize. But when we moved to the farm, our jurisdiction actually changed. And I think it was about in December 2024, after 2 years of receiving no maintenance, I went to the police station that services our area on the farm, which is in Port Elizabeth. And the female officer I spoke to gave me the advice and explained to me that if I have moved, my jurisdiction has changed. And maintenance is something that is awarded in your personal capacity when it comes to jurisdiction. Which means that based on jurisdiction, I could apply to have my file transferred from the Humansdorp court to the Port Elizabeth court, because that is my area of jurisdiction. And so I did that, and I thanked her because she was the first person that explained that to me. And that is after we had been living on the farm for quite a few months, and no one else that I had asked for assistance with all the people we were dealing with had pointed that out to me. So then the file transfer took a while. I think literally because of the December holidays, and then carrying on with following up and trying to get it sorted out in January. They explained to me all sorts of procedures, and I followed up, and eventually, I think by March, is when the new law court in Port Elizabeth confirmed for me that all my details had been captured on their system, and the file is now successfully transferred, and I can now get assistance for the maintenance from them. And from there, I spoke to their maintenance clerks and officials to explain what was going on and ask for the correct assistance. And they helped me to do an application for a warrant of execution against Mr. Bradshaw for the maintenance arrears. So that application was done in March. I was immediately assisted, and I was immediately given a court date. The court date was 2 months later. So yes, it was 2 months later. But that whole situation and scenario was 100% better and was legal because I was assisted. I wasn't asked to come back in 8 weeks. I wasn't told they need to investigate. I wasn't told all these stories and lies that the Humansdorp court officials told me. I was simply given the correct form, explained how to do the application so that I could give them the correct evidence in terms of bank statements and the court order that was granted, and they explained to me what I need to put in and not put in. They helped me because this is what you're supposed to do. And so I did the application, and the clerk processed it on that same day, and I walked out of there with a court date for in 2 months' time. When for 2 years I could not get a court date in Humansdorp. So then, in May, 2 months later, the warrant of execution was granted. Okay? On the simple, basic facts that there's a court order that already exists that was granted. Which means you don't have to go into all the finances of Mr. Bradshaw and the trust and all their excuses and his lies in court that he's so poor and he can't afford maintenance, which is not true, which he'd been telling the court in divorce court for a few years that he can't afford it, and it's not true because otherwise that maintenance order wouldn't have been made. Because all the finances, his personal finances and the trust finances and the family finances were gone through with a fine-tooth comb, right? It was all investigated, heard in front of a magistrate that decided on that order and the amount that was fair. Okay? And it wasn't even what we were used to. So they look at standard of living and you submit receipts and bank statements. And if you add those up, how much Mr. Bradshaw was spending on us and what our lifestyle was and how we were living, the order that was granted was less than that. So it was more than fair. The new law court, my new jurisdiction, looked at the court order because I still thought, as I normally do because of how I've been attacked over the last 4 years, that I now had to explain and go into all the finances and prove that he can afford it. And they said to me, no, there's a court order, so they work off of that court order. And basically the only evidence they wanted was my bank statements that he hadn't been paying. That was it. There was a few other procedures and they check things and they go through all the paperwork and we ironed out a few other details because the maintenance, I can never, there's a maintenance officer and a maintenance investigator and I get those confused, whose title is who and who does what. But the point is I was assisted and led, as is the court procedure, through an inquiry by this, I think, maintenance officer, who went through all the documents with me to check everything and ask me questions and decided what he was going to take into account and what not, what's valid, because they know the procedures. And that inquiry happened in front of the magistrate, who then made her order. And so a court order was granted, a warrant of execution, which means that it should have been taken by a sheriff and acted upon, and Mr. Bradshaw's assets should be taken and sold to recover the money that he owes me. That's what that warrant was for. That warrant was granted, if I remember correctly, on the 16th of May 2025. It's now the 28th of June 2026. It's more than a year later. More than a year later. What Mr. Bradshaw did is his attorney applied to have the warrant set aside or varied. They're disputing it, which, as I understand, is their legal right to do. But what I don't feel is legal or justice is the fact that this matter has been postponed in court for more than a year. That a year later, there's still no judgment and the matter has not been heard. And that's what I want to get into now. So our last court date to argue that warrant for them to dispute it was on Wednesday the 24th. And this is where I want to get into general things that people don't understand about the court system, about court hearings, about your options, about how things work. Because again, people have a misconception, your average citizen, that things work fairly if you've not engaged with this process. And walking into the system, into this process for the first time, that is your expectation. And it would have been a welcome warning for someone to explain to me otherwise. And so that is what I'm trying to do. That is the aim of this. Firstly, in court, you have a right to represent yourself, speak for yourself. You can do that. You don't have to have an attorney. Or you can have an attorney. And when you have an attorney, that attorney speaks for you and you are not allowed to speak. And if you have an attorney, you have two options. You can hire a private attorney for which you pay, which costs a lot of money, which is what Mr. Bradshaw has had for 4 years throughout the entire divorce. If you cannot afford private legal fees, then you have the right to apply for legal aid, which is a state attorney. So it's free on the principle within the law that things need to be fair. So that if the other side has an attorney, you have the right to apply for legal aid because it's unbalanced and not fair for one side to be represented and the other side not. So then you get legal aid. Now there's two problems here that I want to point out. The one problem is that all the courts work separately from each other. So that when you have a maintenance order, a maintenance matter, it's heard in maintenance court. When you get divorced, you get divorced in, I think, the civil court or whatever they call it. Civil or regional, it's a bit confusing. But it's a different court. That's what I'm trying to point out. Then you also get children's court, which we're going to discuss just now. Then, while you're getting divorced, if there's domestic violence or anything like that, and you need to apply for a protection order or her harassment order, or you need to address you and your children's safety. That is also in a different court. It's in the domestic violence family court. So the way the system was set up is that all these matters are separate, which does not make any sense. I don't know who came up with that idea, what they were thinking, if they had the illusion that it could create order and streamline everything, to put everything in little boxes. I'm sure there was some thinking to it, but in reality, it doesn't make sense and it doesn't work. And I'm going to explain to you why. Because now someone like Mr. Bradshaw, who's got access to family finances and a family trust, all of which we worked on and built up together, by the way, for 10 years. So you can look at our finances and the assets and things like net worth and value when we started, and there's an argument to be made that with the assistance of a loyal wife and the collaboration and combination of us working together, what could be achieved and the success that it created. And then you look at 10 years later, the value and net worth and assets and the trust and what was going on. There's obviously an increase, right? And then when I leave, that was one of the reasons the maintenance order was granted. Because otherwise, only Mr. Bradshaw has access to that which we jointly built up for 10 years. And I do not have access to it. And then what happens in court is he can afford a private attorney, and I must either have legal aid or no attorney, which is completely unfair.
One day, more than one day actually, but one day in particular, he had 3 attorneys and an advocate, and Naomi was left alone by legal aid, who just didn't bother to show up. And still she gave them an ass kicking.
And so what I want to point out is that part of the reason for a maintenance order is that in this type of situation, the court wants the two parties to be on equal footing. It needs to be fair in the courtroom. And with Mr. Bradshaw withholding maintenance for 4 years and me struggling to afford an attorney, what happened was nothing that transpired for the last 4 years has been fair or equal or just. We were not on equal footing in that courtroom, ever, not for 1 second. Not since the moment he stopped paying maintenance. And therefore every single order and action and everything that followed from that moment can actually be disputed and should be investigated and appealed and rescinded and redone and reheard, if that makes sense to the average person listening. Because it's all fine and well to say to the public, you have the right to legal aid, you have the right to a fair trial. But legal aid has a policy that they can only assist you with one matter at a time. One. So initially, in the divorce, when Mr. Bradshaw started withholding maintenance and not paying, and I couldn't pay an attorney and feed myself and pay rent and feed Ariel and pay electricity and pay petrol, it wasn't possible with no money.
And get judged for not finding a job, though looking for a job, and eventually starting her own company and employing other people whilst fighting all of this. And still they say she's not a good mother. Can you imagine these demented people? The goal, the absolute entitlement, and stupidity. These are also not clever people.
And so, when we lost our flat, because we could not afford to pay rent, your priorities shift to immediate survival. Food, rent, petrol, electricity, water. Legal fees go to the bottom, which means they cannot be paid. So I could not afford a private attorney. So I was advised by one of the magistrates at the time during the divorce to apply for legal aid, because she said it's a very complex matter and she wants me to have assistance and representation. So I applied for legal aid. And then again, as a gullible, naive new person in the system, you think, oh, now I'm going to be helped. Someone's got my back. Someone's advocating for me. What a joke. That's not the truth. Again, two problems, and we'll get back to the other point just now. Because legal aid can only help you with one thing at a time. Once they were appointed for the divorce, now I had a legal aid attorney that I could sit with and consult in terms of the divorce. But guess what? Maintenance is in a different court. So the fact that Mr. Bradshaw wasn't paying maintenance, my legal aid attorney simply said to me, I can't help you with that. It's in a different court. You need a different attorney. I can only help you with one matter. And then with Mr. Bradshaw repeatedly threatening me and threatening my father, stealing our car, sending the police to my house to threaten me and intimidate me, following me, stalking me. With that situation getting out of control, when I went to apply for a protection order against Mr. Bradshaw, and I again thought, now I'm going to be helped. I'm going to be kept safe and my daughter will be safe. No. Because why? Legal aid can only help you with one matter at a time. So you arrive to court to explain yourself and he's got a right to dispute it. And even though a temporary order was granted, the magistrate has to decide whether it's going to be made final or not. And what happened? My legal aid attorney can't help me. Oh, sorry, that's a different court. It's a different matter. I can only help you with one thing at a time.
You know what that initial legal aid lawyer said to her at the very first interview? I'm really sorry, Miss Bradshaw, but the law really is not fair, nor will it help you. So I don't know what you want me to do. I will try. That's where it started from. And we had to hold his hand all the way through the process until the day that they blocked her from being entered into the court and did a deal behind her back of where her baby girl should go. I just wanted to highlight that's the point she had to start from, facing that piece of shit with his slimy lawyers and advocates with limitless funds. That's where she had to start from. Can you imagine a mom without resources and friends and finances, being stuck in this sick situation. No one to stick up for you, no one to... I don't want to make this about me, please.
Okay.
Just continue. I'm just trying to highlight something.
So, that was going to be my next point. While this is going on, while I'm trying to get assistance to get the maintenance order enforced because he's defaulting on it, while I'm trying to get assistance to get the protection order made permanent, and trying to advocate for my and my daughter's safety, and I cannot afford an attorney for both of these matters, Mr. Bradshaw, when we are in divorce court and I'm trying to raise the problem of him not paying the maintenance, and I'm raising it to the family advocate and to everyone involved in this.
Besides the harassment, the stalking, the sending people after her, the having her followed around, sending officers in unclothed uniforms, so plain clothes, to her house at night to threaten and intimidate her, stealing her vehicle, or the vehicle, the family vehicle, which was in her lawful possession, which she cannot use, threatening her, threatening the child, saying, get a lawyer, I'm going to fight you. Every time she takes the child to him daily to visit the father, he threatens her, shouts at her in front of the child. She has to still deal with this and try and report all this in another different court as well. So between all of this, she is now busy with this.
So, Mr. Bradshaw keeps claiming to the family advocate and in divorce court that he's so poor he can't afford maintenance. He just can't afford it. While he's in court with a private attorney who's
doing 1 million rand renovations to his multiple guest house.
So he's in court with a private attorney saying he cannot afford maintenance, and this private attorney is saying this on his behalf. And then when the protection order was applied for, that I tried to get against him, he arrives to court not with an attorney, with an advocate, which is in a whole other cost bracket. It's way more expensive because they're more qualified. They are senior attorneys, if you can put it like that.
You can't even access an advocate really without a lawyer. So that slimy lawyer, Heinz Spangenberg, had to refer this advocate.
So he can come to court, to domestic violence court, to squash a protection order with the assistance of a hired advocate. But he, in the same breath, he says to the family advocate in the divorce court, oh, I'm too poor to afford maintenance.
A private advocate costs between 40 and 100,000 rand a day, just to give perspective. And you have to pay your attorney to arrange that, between 3 and 10,000 rand a day, or an hour sometimes.
So now the other problem I want to point out is, if you're smart, you'd be catching on by now, is that not only does the victim or the person with lesser means face this situation where in a divorce, if there's grounds for or the reason for the divorce, right? If someone has to divorce, there's problems. So it's extremely common to then face maintenance problems, domestic violence problems. This is a common thread, right? Because if everything was fine, you wouldn't be in divorce court. So if you're in divorce court, there is problems. And then the fact that these problems all have to get addressed in different courts. Not only do you not have an attorney or someone to assist you, can you see how everything is disjointed and not connected? Because he can stand in one court and say something and claim something and lie, which is a crime. It's called perjury. You're not allowed to lie in court under oath or in affidavits or in court documents and court applications, which he's done repeatedly. What happens in maintenance court, and what happens in divorce court, and what happens in domestic violence court for protection orders is all separate. And so in a complicated matter like this, where there's a history and things are getting dragged out and there's postponements because I don't have legal, but they want to give me a chance, so it gets postponed, and now the whole thing becomes very complex and drawn out. But the one magistrate doesn't know what the other one knows, and does not have that information, does not have that context. And this is vital. This is so important, because what the attorneys and the abusers and the aggressors are doing are they are exploiting this gap, because they can stand in one court and claim something and convince a magistrate of something, when that magistrate doesn't have the full history and context of what is going on in the divorce and in all the other matters. Because when I try to raise safety concerns with the family advocate or in divorce court, his attorney can say, no, but the protection order was dismissed, so these are allegations, there's no validity to the safety concern she is raising, without the magistrate realizing that it's not the validity that is in question.
Sorry, and also, if you go to that same court on another date due to postponement or having to have another day of hearing or chatting or whatever, they can rotate a new magistrate in or change the courtroom that you're in to make you go to the courtroom they want you to be in front of the magistrate they want you to be in. Very common in Humansdorp, very common.
Yes, that is another point I'm getting to. So, I feel, and I know there are many other women and mothers and victims.
And also single fathers.
Yes, and advocates. I'm not talking about what we just referred to, a legal attorney, that's one step up, an advocate. I'm talking about people that are advocating, trying to create awareness for these problems in the justice system and in the courts. There's a lady that is advocating for maintenance problems. That is what I'm talking about. She's also pointed out this problem, is that it does not make sense when a couple is going through a divorce to have the maintenance and the protection order and everything separate, because that is where the abusers are getting away literally with murder, because everything is separate and the magistrate you are standing in front of does not have the history and the context of everything that has happened. And now compounded onto that is this problem that I think they claim that it's for fairness and justice and for fresh eyes and independency that magistrates keep rotating. But what is happening also, often, you've now just had a good day in court where you've managed to convince the magistrate you're in front of everything that is going on. You've made your points. You either had an attorney or you didn't, but you felt like you could speak and advocate for yourself. You had the right documents. You explained evidence. You explained a scenario. That magistrate now has a little bit of history, a little bit of context to a situation, and you feel like you've just made progress in one area. And then the next time you come to court, now you expect to build on that progress. and all of a sudden you're in front of a new magistrate. And the amount of times I've been told to my face in court on record, that is recorded. They record court sessions, court hearings, where a magistrate has told me, I have not read the file. I do not know what is going on here. Can you explain to me? How can a magistrate exercise authority and make a court order and tell individuals what to do with their lives when it affects the safety and well-being of children, and in the same breath they say to you, I have not read the file, and we are in front of this magistrate for the first time, and this magistrate's got no idea what's been going on? Does that sound fair? Does that sound just? Does that sound like it makes any logical sense? Never mind legal. And this has happened over and over and over again. Initially in the divorce, we were in front of, almost every time I go to court, I was in front of a different magistrate. And even for the protection order I tried to get, every time I went in, I was in front of a different magistrate. Now they hear so many cases in one day. And if postponements are constantly granted to give both people a chance to have legal representation, or one of them starts raising certain issues, but now next time you come, that magistrate doesn't know. And I think the way it's supposed to work in theory, why they think this is okay, is because I see the magistrates always making notes, right? So as we're talking and they're asking questions and they're going about their way of presiding over the matter, what we answer and what is happening, they record everything. They make notes. So what is supposed to happen is that if you're now next time in front of a new magistrate, that magistrate is supposed to read the notes from the previous magistrate to be brought up to speed, to be able to know what they're actually presiding over and making rulings on. But the other problem you have is when something is drawn out, like my maintenance issue was for 4 years, like our divorce was for 4 years. When the other side, because Mr. Bradshaw has an attorney, starts initiating a strategy that you can term by many definitions: lawfare, legal warfare, malicious litigation, where they bring application after application after application. They try to out-litigate you.
Economic gender-based violence.
Because they're exhausting you by all these applications, and they're making the file bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger every time you come to court with all these applications. So that by the time you're sitting in front of a magistrate desperately trying to claw your way out of a mess, when they rotate the magistrate and a new magistrate comes in and he sees a file this big, they don't want to read it. They don't want to do all that work. So what happens is they postpone. They say, oh no, I've just received the file this morning, or I've just been given this file yesterday afternoon. I've not had time to read it. I'm going to postpone the matter for, let's say, a month or 2 months, because I need to read the file. And then what happens next time you come to court? You won't believe it. There's a new magistrate. Has he read the file? No. Does he want a postponement? Yes. Why? Because he needs to read the file. This really happens. And I can laugh about it now, but it's no joking matter. Because when you're owed 4 years of maintenance and you've been dragged through court unfairly and unjustly due to struggling to afford attorneys and to speak up, you are by that time in such a horrible situation in terms of your child's safety, your life, assets that have been liquidated, accounts frozen from debt. You are finished. You're ruined. And then you get promised final arguments. And by George, there's a new magistrate. And the file's this thick. And the matter gets postponed again because, oh, sorry, he hasn't read the file. And this is apparently justice in South Africa. That's what's going on. That is what's going on. Okay. So in court you have two options. I'm just looking at my notes here. You can either speak for yourself or you have the right to an attorney. Now, with 4 years of maintenance not paid, but to try and get that maintenance, to keep fighting for it, means you have to keep driving to court. That's petrol money. You sit there for hours. So you lose out on income. Because when you're sitting at court, you're not working. You miss out on income. So now you're losing money to try and get what's legally owed to you. You're chasing a debt, going into debt. Just get that. But this is justice in South Africa, okay? If you want an attorney and you can't afford it, you can get legal aid. Now, I've explained to you the problem that legal aid can only assist you with one matter at a time, but what I'm wanting to get to now is the way it works in court. When you are unrepresented and you choose to represent yourself, you may speak because there's no legal person there speaking on your behalf, right? So you get to say what you want to say. So every time, for every court matter, every situation, depending on what's going on, you have to make this choice. And this is a choice that for me personally is particularly difficult. That I've become very angry about. Because from my personal experience, what I found is that if you speak for yourself, the one advantage is you get to speak for yourself. You can open your mouth and say. So, if Mr. Bradshaw's attorney is standing up in court and lying through his teeth, I can say, no, that's a lie. If Mr. Bradshaw speaks, because for some court matters lately he's been choosing to come to court alone, and we'll get to that. Because now all of a sudden he's poor and can't afford an attorney. But he had an attorney bully me for 4 years to succeed in a horrendous divorce. But now, oh no, now he's apparently got no attorney when we're sitting in children's court and domestic violence court. So when he then speaks, I can say, no, that's a lie. And because I know exactly what's going on, I can present all the evidence, all the facts, all the dates, all the times. I can explain what's going on. And so from one point of view, I prefer that. Because the lies in court drive me absolutely insane. And so you kind of feel that it's good to have a say and to be able to open your mouth. But when you don't have an attorney, you do feel disempowered by the fact that you don't know the entire law. You're not a lawyer. You haven't studied every single asset and facet and nook and cranny of the law. You don't know completely how attorneys implement the law, what the magistrates are looking for in terms of what they take into account and consideration for granting orders.
But isn't it ridiculous that a magistrate would require a layman, a citizen, a public person to present well and to present accurate, structured within the court context and processes on the day, randomly come and present accurately in court format? Would you not think it would be the other way around, that they would, and as far as I understand, the magistrates should guide you, protect you, and help you? That's the law.
And inform you of your rights.
Not that you must know how to lawyer.
No, you should be legally protected, and the law should be implemented whether you understand it or not.
It's an excuse. It is an excuse.
But so, what I often feel is, and because this is based on personal experience, is that if you choose to represent yourself and not have an attorney, you run the risk of not saying the right things, not convincing the magistrate, not presenting the correct evidence,
not following the structure,
yes,
and thus not being able to protect your baby girl because you got some page order or numbering wrong.
And so what happens is, from personal experience, from protection orders and other applications that have been dismissed that I've tried to do by myself,
because money and assets ran out to pay lawyers who took money, helped, and then left as soon as you couldn't pay them anymore. That is also disgusting, you entire law fraternity. You're supposed to help till the end, not just till the money runs out. You're all guilty of that. Cease. Imagine a doctor ending an operation halfway because he thinks, no, he's only paid 30 grand and this operation is going to be 60 grand. I think we'll just operate halfway here.
Yeah, that's a whole nother point and topic that we'll get into detail too. But that is another point. So, if you decide to speak for yourself, because you cannot afford an attorney and because you prefer to speak for yourself, because what has also happened is that attorneys have lied and misrepresented me and not advocated for me properly. Okay? So now you speak for yourself, but you don't say exactly what the magistrate wants to hear. You can't convince her. You don't have all the laws. It's a bit difficult, right? Because you're not an attorney. Then your matter gets dismissed. Your protection order, or whatever you're trying to achieve. And so often, you rather choose to postpone the matter until you can get legal assistance, which is your right to do, which is one of the reasons why things get dragged out for years. But so, what I'm trying to point out is that on one hand, you want to be able to speak, but you feel like it's such a risk because you've got more of a chance of your application being dismissed or saying and doing the wrong thing, and then you've got to start all over again. Versus having an attorney. On the one hand, you feel this is a pro, because this person understands the law and they will advocate for you. But the other thing, and this is what I was talking about that really makes me angry and what I've been struggling with, that I'm trying to find the right word to describe this. What gets to me is the fact that if you have an attorney on record for you, you cannot speak. You may not speak in that courtroom. So, unless you have 100% trust in your attorney that they have your back, that they know everything about the last 4 years, so that whatever gets thrown at them by a magistrate or the opposing counsel, they'll be able to answer, and answer accurately with the truth, which is a scenario that is almost not even possible when it comes to a situation that's been dragged out for 4 years. Because it will take not hours, not days, but weeks for me to catch up an attorney on absolutely everything that has happened for the last 4 years. And they don't work like that, plus they work by the hour. So every email you send them, every timeline you send them, costs you more money for them to read. Or if you sit in a consultation with them, every hour they spend talking to you and listening to you costs you money. From that point of view, and because of how busy they are, especially if it's a legal aid state attorney, they cannot devote that type of time to you. It's impossible. And so that person has no way of knowing 4 years of legal and personal history of what has happened. And when the opposing counsel comes then with little snide remarks and comments and accusations, that attorney doesn't have my knowledge because they've not lived through this for 4 years. They don't know what I know, and they respond the best way they know how, but it's not accurate, and because they don't know the truth. And so often I get extremely frustrated by their answers and what then gets put on record, because I'm not allowed to speak, and this person's giving a ridiculous answer that I would not have said, and that's not true. And then you come out of that even more angry because now you were represented, but this person doesn't know everything.
And if you dare try gently, respectfully correct them or add your voice, the magistrate sips on a big squeegee bottle and shouts at you.
So, this is what happened at our last court hearing. Is I finally had legal aid after many postponements for this maintenance warrant of execution to be enforced. And at the previous court date, 2 months ago, we were promised final arguments for this week that just passed. Because as mentioned, this warrant was granted more than a year ago. Now, any normal person in their right mind that is rational can tell you that if it takes a year plus for a court order to be enforced, that is not justice. It's not justice. Okay? And so at the previous court date, we were promised, and the matter was set down for final arguments, final hearing. It needs to be heard, finalized, finished, klar. This past Wednesday. That was in front of a female magistrate that had been hearing the matter for a few postponements and hearings over the last few months. Before that, earlier in the year, there was a different magistrate, and on that day when things needed to proceed, he also said he had not read the file. And then that day we were also in the domestic violence court for another matter, and by the time we got back to the magistrate court, apparently the court was closing for fumigation early, so then he didn't want to read the file and proceed with the matter on that day. So firstly, Mr. Bradshaw's attorney arrived, making a claim that the magistrate who had granted the warrant of execution apparently told him that she wanted to hear the matter. No one else can verify this story. That magistrate that originally granted the order has not been in court or heard this case for months. Since I've personally been going to court for this matter from January, because last year I was injured and could not attend.
Sorry.
And as I understand it, when I had an attorney who I instructed a few times to proceed with this matter and not wait and not delay, because it's very straightforward, there's a court order, it just needs to be enforced. I don't know what's so difficult about this. The attorney that we hired and paid last year to proceed with this, my instructions to that attorney was proceed, do not postpone, because we are desperate for this money. But he did not follow instructions, and in my absence, where I still don't know exactly what was said and what was done, the matter was postponed repeatedly. And then after that attorney stole our money and did not do any of the things he was supposed to do in terms of preparing applications, bringing matters to court, following instructions, nothing. That attorney kept all our money for work that he did not do, and I was still injured and struggling to get to court. And so I kept asking the court to log me in virtually so that I can attend court and be present and we can proceed with the maintenance. 3-4 times it was postponed because I wasn't present and I was marked absent, which again was a lie. Because I wasn't absent, I have emails and phone calls of multiple attempts on record trying to arrange a virtual appearance.
She could not get out of bed and stand because of being attacked and assaulted by that slimy police officer that her ex-husband has in his pocket for months, which is also part of the reason why we are currently in bed, not because we're lazy, but because Naomi is in pain and can't stand for long.
So that's the puppies.
Yeah, I've got to go check on the dogs. We'll have to take a body break. I've got to go check on the little puppies.
Okay. Everything's on and working again. So, on this day at court, for maintenance arrears to the value of 4 years that's owed to me, with a maintenance court order that is valid and a warrant of execution that is valid, both have been granted, set down for final arguments for trial. Mr. Bradshaw's attorney arrives to court with some story that apparently the magistrate that granted the original warrant of execution,
So that's now the second court which has said that this is all fine, it's been worked out, and Mr. Bradshaw is liable and should have paid this and must pay this.
Okay. His attorney arrives to court with the tall tale that apparently the original magistrate that granted the order said to him that she wants to hear the matter. Okay? And so all of a sudden, there's some flat spin to find this magistrate. But the magistrate he is referring to has not been in this court and has not been hearing this matter since last year. Because as mentioned, since January when I started attending court, because we found out that the court here has a wheelchair, so that because it's a very big court, it's a massive court building, and so there was no way that I was going to be able to manage that court building and walk on crutches that far from the car to where the court is, and then every time to the toilet. It's just not doable because it's too big of a court building. So when Mr. LaRue confirmed that they have a wheelchair for me, that made the court accessible so that I could start attending in January.
That was the only time she left the house or got out of bed, was to go fight for her little girl and her rights. In the 4th year, at the 2nd courthouse, more than 100 appearances, attacked, hunted and injured, and still.
Okay, so now, after this matter's been postponed repeatedly, this is the story the attorney comes with. Now everyone's trying to find this magistrate.
Now Mary's sitting in pain.
And normally we get assisted quite early and quickly.
Thank you, New Law Court. You guys are definitely aware of and sensitive to pregnant women, injured women, elderly people, and so on.
Yes.
Humansdorp Court is definitely not. They victimize people there at their own discretion. New Law Court do not. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I knew something was up from the amount of time we were waiting to be assisted, which is not usual at court in Port Elizabeth. And then, without me getting a chance to speak to my attorney, all of a sudden we get called into court. And the magistrate is asking what is going on. And the opposing counsel, Mr. Bradshaw's attorneys, spins this tale that apparently this magistrate told him she wanted to hear the matter. Now, what I keep wanting to say is, since January when I started attending court, there has been new and different magistrates rotating in that court for maintenance matters. Okay, I've not seen the magistrate this whole year that initially granted the order. Okay, and every single time we've gone, everything's proceeded as normal. They ask who has an attorney, who hasn't, how far are we with arguments and applications.
By the way, it's worth mentioning that they're not disputing the order. They're disputing, first of all, they wanted to dispute jurisdiction. They wanted to drag it back to Humansdorp for obvious reasons. And then once they saw that wasn't going to fly, they started to try having it varied, the amount and the calculation. So think about that. They're saying, yeah, but we just want to make it our way.
Yeah.
How's that?
Okay. This tall tale that his attorney came with is a tall tale, which is a nice way of saying he was lying, right? Because he proceeded to say on record in court that every time we were there, he had spoken to this magistrate and that she had said she wanted to hear the matter. Now, I don't know when this was, maybe in La La Land, because it did not happen on record. It did not happen in front of me when I was in court. My attorney currently from Legal Aid and the previous attorneys that were assisting me for a short while, and myself when I was going unrepresented, at none of those occasions do any of us have a memory of this judge being present or saying this.
It's not written in the file, and the new judge has no record or note of it.
And no one can confirm this story because, as Mr. LaRue points out, it's not on record. The magistrates all make notes. It's not noted. It's not on record. So what is the obvious conclusion that we can draw from this? He's lying. Because when then he said to the magistrate that he had spoken to the maintenance officer about this, the maintenance officer then gave his input and explained that yes, that magistrate granted the original warrant of execution, the order, but this application is to have the order varied because they're disputing the order.
Not the order,
Now,
the details of the order.
Now that dispute, this application for them to dispute and vary or set aside whatever they want to do, whatever their argument is, that has not been formally heard. That process has not started, which means that what the maintenance officer was saying is that it's not a situation where the argument is part heard or the trial is part heard. We're not in the middle of a situation where a magistrate has knowledge of the beginning of arguments and it's now not ethical or a good idea to switch magistrates when they haven't heard the beginning. That's what the maintenance officer was pointing out. It's not that type of situation. There's been a lot of postponements and it's taken a long time to get all the paperwork to the point where everyone's ready for arguments and where both parties are represented. But any magistrate can hear this because this is an independent application and it's not been started, it's not part heard. But then the magistrate reprimanded Mr. Bradshaw's attorney because apparently the instruction he gave him was not to speak to the maintenance officer, but to go find this magistrate to confirm whether this is what she said and whether she's available to come and hear the matter because it's set down for final arguments.
So misrepresenting the magistrate, trying to tall tale to the magistrate, but luckily the magistrate was not having it in some partial manner.
So then the court had to recess
Again,
for Mr. Bradshaw's attorney to actually follow the instructions that were given to him in the beginning of the morning to go find this magistrate. Then upon the recess, we were told that this magistrate is not present, she is on leave. Okay? And so then the matter was postponed because now they first want to assess whether what this attorney is saying is true, if that magistrate did in fact indicate that she wanted to hear the matter, and actually, if we're all being honest with each other, as I was saying earlier, it's because the original application for the maintenance was already big, because it's not just personal finances, there's a family trust involved. So there was trust documents and disputes. It was
and there's child molestation involved, and there's assault involved, and there's threats of life involved, and there's murdered dogs involved, and there's partners who've been locked up involved, and there's an innocent mother who you are currently looking at who was put in a proper jail, prison, twice, and had to pay in excess of 100,000 rand to just get out. So don't focus on the maintenance. That just happened to be the case of the day.
Yes, I'm just going through it case by case, court date by court date, trying to give accounts of what happened in court, because I'm wanting people to get an understanding of the court process and the rules and regulations and the way the attorneys operate. I'm wanting you all to understand what is going on a practical level, because people don't understand why the law doesn't just get enforced, and they don't understand what is going on here. And so for people to understand what's going on, but also for other mothers and victims and people that are entering the process, that is the main reason for me sitting down and explaining this, is because I wish someone explained all of this to me when I started. Because you have no idea the mess you're walking into, because you've got a completely false sense of safety and protection under the law, which does not exist, because that's not in application what happens. That's the point of this. And so that's why my kind of idea for today was not to go into too many of the actual details of my case. I'm trying to explain the processes and what happens and where you get stuck and why things don't work and where the blocks and the problems are. So then I spoke to my attorney, the legal aid attorney on record for the maintenance that day, in private, and told her that I don't consent to another postponement because I was promised final arguments. And I explained to her the frustration that every time we come to court there's a different magistrate. And every time they say they've not read the file, they need to postpone or take a recess to read the file. And I explained to her that when we were promised final arguments, it cannot keep happening that there's a new magistrate who hasn't read the file and is not prepared, and now we get another postponement because it's been more than a year. So I simply pointed out the injustice of this fact, that this is not my fault, but it's impacting on my life, literally our ability to pay rent and feed ourselves and get to court, and more and over and above all of that, our ability to afford a proper attorney to get help for my daughter. So them constantly postponing the matter because the file is this big, because of 4 years
of lies,
of things that have been going on in applications and lies and postponements and delays and stories. I'm saying someone needs to take responsibility for this case, sit down and read the file, and let us argue it out and finish this, because it's not justice for this to drag on for more than a year and a court order not to be enforced simply because the file is that big and no one wants to read it. And they keep switching magistrates. I was just pointing out that that is not justice, and we are the ones that are suffering. My daughter is the one that is suffering. Someone needs to break this chain, and we were promised final arguments. Okay? So 2 things happened in that courtroom. Number 1, when the magistrate addressed my attorney to find out my view or what my instruction was to her, she then said to the magistrate that my instruction is that he must read the file and we must carry on. To which the magistrate took great offense and reprimanded me that I am not to instruct him what to do. And I also took great offense to that, because that is not what I said. In fact, I had a little outburst in court in shock at her choice of words, and tried to correct her and said, I didn't instruct that, it was a request. And then I got reprimanded again for speaking, because if you are represented, you may not speak, only your attorney must speak. And so only afterwards, when court was adjourned and I could speak to her privately, could I address that. Because I could not fathom why she chose the words that she did and said it in such a tardy manner, as if I'm instructing the magistrate, which is not what I was doing. My instructions to her was to request that the file please be read and we proceed. Can we take a recess and can we proceed a bit later in the day, since we are all here? And we were promised final arguments, and because it's been more than a year. I discussed all of this with her privately, and it was her job, in my opinion, to speak correctly and with respect and accurately to present that request, not in such a tardy way, not so disrespectful, and not putting words in my mouth that I did not say. And I took great offense to that, because I do not appreciate being misrepresented and people putting words in my mouth, and then I'm told I cannot speak.
Whilst injured, trying to get to my baby girl, your baby girl, the baby girl.
So that was for me a complete shock, because from my experience from other legal aid attorneys, law clinic attorneys, pro bono attorneys that we've hired, they do ask us, the clients, what we want to do, and then I understand that it's an instruction. They take instruction from us. She was saying, no, that's just how we speak. We take instruction. Yes, you take instruction from me, what I'm saying, but you cannot say that I'm instructing the magistrate. It was a request. And in my experience, other attorneys, once they listen to you, what you are saying, and then present it to the magistrate, it gets said with the correct language, accurately, with respect, because they have a certain way that they address the magistrates. And so I found it highly unusual and suspicious for her to speak so directly
and ugly
and tardy, as if that came from me, which was not the truth. And the second thing is, Mr. Bradshaw's attorney then approached the court alleging that it's not proper for me to insist on continuing on that day and pressing everyone for the matter to be heard and to carry on that day, when all the postponements for the last year have been at my request because of me, which again made me look bad. And it's not about looking bad. It's about the fact that it was a lie. And my legal aid attorney did not know that, because she had not been on the case for the last year. I only applied for legal aid in March. So she doesn't know the history of the matter. Because one of the other problems with legal aid is they are overworked. They have many cases to take on in their single capacity. And they do not spend hours with you to go into the history of every matter. They only deal with what is relevant. And so she did not know that his attorney was lying, but I knew. and I could not speak. And so on record, once again, a false perception was created. And it was only afterwards that I could address her and explain to her that he is in fact lying. Because the previous postponements were not at my request at all. That is 100% not accurate. That is a complete lie. Because Mr. Bradshaw loves his money so much. It is his main priority.
Not actually his money, the money that he stole from his father and his entire family.
Yes.
Because the grandmother left it to the entire family, but he managed to talk the ears of his ill father, who he left outside in a Zozo hut in his own excrement to pass away, whilst running a multiple unit guest house. That's murder, my friend. We're coming for you.
Yes, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
Yes. So ja, vir my net daai kussing aangegee.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, you're not my friend, my friend.
His attorney was saying that all the previous postponements were at my request, for me, because of me. Now, what I'm trying to explain now is that some of you know, some of you don't. But the whole reason that I was attacked and beaten up and thrown into prison unlawfully, illegally, for nothing,
proven in court,
was because of Mr. Bradshaw wanting to avoid this warrant being executed against him. Because I don't know who of you have figured out the timing of this. On the 16th of May, the warrant was granted. The warrant of execution against his property for the 4 years of maintenance he owes me. 16th of May. On the 22nd of May, Captain Stander came.
In another province, out of his jurisdiction, with an entire task force with long gun rifles,
held us at gunpoint and attacked and assaulted me.
In another province, whilst we were running towards the law, we were going to the High Court.
Okay? I was attacked and assaulted and abducted and brought back to their jurisdiction, all because of the maintenance order that was granted, the warrant of execution, and Mr. Bradshaw being so desperate for it to not be executed and enforced and his property taken, for the debt to be recovered. 16 May the order was granted. 22 May I'm attacked. While I have to arrange an attorney and get myself out, that bought them the time to do paperwork and submit this application that they're wanting to dispute the jurisdiction and vary the order and all that crap. Okay? So I was literally attacked to avoid him losing all this money. That's what he was protecting. And then from there, I instructed my attorney at the time repeatedly while this was going on, because I could not be in court. Please proceed, please proceed, please proceed. Do not postpone. Because again, if you want me to pay you and keep using you, I need that money. It was in his best interest to proceed, and he did not. And also, he did not explain to me that answering papers had to be drafted if I'm opposing their application to set it aside. So months dragged on of him, in my absence, postponing the matter against my wishes, misrepresenting me, not completing and filing the paperwork, that I'm opposing them wanting to vary and set aside the order. Does that sound like those postponements were my fault? No. Did I want them? No. Then when I realized this attorney is stealing our money and not actually doing anything, I started contacting the court and saying, I will log in virtually. I'm injured. I cannot come in person, but I'm not absent. I do not want postponements. Log me in and I will attend court. They refused. Most of the time, they ignored my emails and did not respond. Does that sound like my fault? Does that sound like I didn't want to be there? Like I asked for the postponements? Because we can start posting all the emails where I very clearly state and beg and plead for the matter not to be postponed. And I asked them for the arrangements and the details to log me in virtually. They ignored me. Then this year I get to an attorney that starts assisting, because Mr. LaRue yet again sold motorbikes and his assets to try and help me out of this mess. So we've got a little bit of money. We go and see an attorney. We want to get them to help with the maintenance.
So we can help Ariel?
So that when that money comes to us, we can then do all the applications that is legally necessary
to
help my daughter.
Because people we don't know, people we've never met, professionals, psychologists, not psychologists, social workers, not social workers, people you've never met before came and took her daughter away and just went away with her daughter twice. Just took someone's child and just went away with it. 4 years ago and 1 year ago. Please continue. I'm just going to help that dog there.
Okay. I'm going to get to all the children's court matters and that. But I just want to explain. I just wanted to set the record straight. So, when we had a little bit of funds that we could access due to selling assets, I got an attorney. This attorney came on record, and she wanted to submit a supplementary affidavit, as in redo the application that I did myself. So to backtrack, there was their application for wanting to dispute and vary or set aside this warrant. And then eventually, when I started attending court by myself, without an attorney, after them repeatedly not assisting me to log in virtually, when we found out that there was a wheelchair that the court has that we could use when I go. Now it became possible for me to go by myself. Then I found out that I had to, if I'm opposing their application, I have to put it in paper. And so I did that, and I submitted it. Then the magistrate was encouraging me to get legal representation because it's such a complex matter. So then, as mentioned, Mr. LaRue sold an asset, one of his motorbikes. We got a little bit of money, we got an attorney on the matter. Then she came on and she had to ask permission to do a supplementary affidavit, to do another one, because mine was, it was done and I could have argued it, but she was saying that she's not comfortable on arguing someone else's paperwork. She wants to draft it herself in her way that she does legally so that she can argue correctly. And so in asking permission to do a supplementary affidavit, Opposing counsel, Mr. Bradshaw's attorneys, was being difficult and malicious and mean and saying, no, they don't agree to that. They first want to argue it. So then another postponement was granted, whereby they would first argue in front of the magistrate whether she's allowed to do that. And then the magistrate has to decide if she's going to allow it or not allow it. And then we get to the point of her supplementing an affidavit. So they were the ones being difficult and dragging out the process and causing, yet again, more postponements. Not me. And that same attorney was lying through his teeth on record to the magistrate saying all the postponements were my fault, which they were not. He wanted to argue and draw out the process. Then the next time we get to court, my attorneys had withdrawn, which is a pattern.
It's too complex, they say.
So what has repeatedly happened over the last few years is that attorney starts to assist me, and then at the last minute before a big court date, I get an email saying my matter is very complex and they don't feel that they have enough resources and time to give it the attention it deserves.
Full while knowing that there is a little child who is proven to have been injured, molested, violated at the bottom of this pile, and full while having knowledge that there are other victims and children also now involved and at the bottom of this same pile. They say, no, it's just, too complicated. Fucking hell.
But in the same breath, they strongly urge and advise me that I must get someone to assist me, to protect me legally.
All these big wigs, all these ivory towers and whitewashed walls. Yo.
So, due to the legal tactic of Mr. Bradshaw's attorney dragging out and the divorce for 4 years, and all the ex partes he did and the malicious litigation and how confusing and complex everything became, that is a specific legal tactic that he used, so that everything becomes so overwhelming for a new attorney to make sense of, that they don't want to engage. That, and or my personal belief, and this is just my opinion, is that I feel that the attorneys have all been threatened behind closed doors.
Or paid off.
Or paid off. There's an element of either threats or bribery and corruption. The attorneys get offered clients or cases or money or some sort of perk.
Or favors, racketeering, history, buddy systems, clubs, and occult. Definitely, I have the evidence, I have the proof, it's coming.
Because this does happen. And it is too much of a coincidence for the amount of times this has happened in one case to one person for the last 4 years. It's not normal.
And the others?
For so many attorneys to be scared of, not have the guts to go up against Mr. Heinz Spangenberg. So if they're not threatened because they're not scared and it's not that, then there's other politics involved between the attorneys that go on behind closed doors. The point is, these attorneys withdrew at the last minute. And I went to court for the next court date and I apologized on their behalf, because it was not my fault or my wish. And I said to the magistrate who again was a new magistrate, that I do not wish to frustrate everyone involved in this, because everyone is getting frustrated with all the postponements, including me. I am happy to proceed. Let's carry on, let's get this done. And as advised by the maintenance officer, which would be the respectful, ethical thing to do, I even gave the court and the opposing counsel notice when my attorneys withdrew, so that I don't blindside them on the day and irritate everyone. And I told them that I will not be able to either afford or arrange alternative legal assistance in such a short amount of time. I'm going to be representing myself. We can continue, so that everyone can come prepared and we can just carry on. Okay, once again, I was not tardy, not disrespectful. Guess what move they pulled next? Mr. Bradshaw arrived to court with a new attorney, because apparently the attorney that had been handling the case was busy in a trial or not available or something.
Or learning to tie his shoelaces or something.
And now again, I perceive this as a blatant lie, and I will tell you why. Because every time we go to court, the attorneys and the magistrates and us, the civilians, the respondents and applicants, as we are called, we all sit there with our diaries and choose a date that everyone is available to come back. Right? So for him now, all of a sudden, to not be available, after every other time when dates were decided upon between everybody, and he arrives, now when I told everyone I'm happy to proceed, so in essence it would have been again a day for final arguments and carrying on. They had to pull some sort of move to delay and postpone, right? And so their move was to show up with this young lady, attorney, female, that looked absolutely exhausted and scatterbrained, like she'd been thrown under a bus and put in on this case on the last minute. She arrived late, in a hustle, was extremely tired and looked deurmekaar in court, and explained to the magistrate that the attorney handling the case was unfortunately not available due to some trial he was busy with, and that she was given this at the last minute.
And it's not fair on her.
And so,
shame, it's not fair on her.
Even though I said I'm ready to proceed, and the maintenance officer said he's ready to proceed, everyone's ready to proceed, including that magistrate that day. Now remember, in the beginning I said to you, what was Mr. Bradshaw's attorney's argument? That apparently the original magistrate that granted the order had told him that she wanted to hear the matter. Yet 2-3 months ago, when we were sitting in front of that magistrate on that day, which was again a new magistrate, a young female lady, not the original magistrate, because I hadn't seen her all year, she indicated that she was ready to proceed. Everyone was ready. She was, I was, maintenance officer was. There was no mention on record by that attorney that they threw in that day, that new lady, or the magistrate, or the maintenance officer, that this original magistrate wanted to preside over the case and hear the matter. No mention of it. We were all ready to go, and no one raised that query or concern or point. But this young lady that was asked to attend at the last minute from her law firm, She asked for a postponement because she said she's not familiar with the case. She hasn't read everything. She's not consulted with Mr. Bradshaw because she's been asked to stand in for the previous attorney. She's not ready for arguments. So a postponement was granted. Why? Because their attorney needed time to familiarize herself with the case. And you won't believe it, one of the next postponements was because the original attorney who she was standing in for from Gravensteins, the guy, because he was not available for arguments and they needed to set a date that suits him. So now the next time we came to court, I was told that they can't set a date with this lady as the attorney because this male attorney is handling the case. It's his case and we have to set a date that suits him. But if that was the case, last time we were at court, why did we not set a date that suited him for final arguments instead of postponing for you to familiarize yourself with the case as if you're now handling it? Those two things are not compatible. That's contradictory. So we see a repeated pattern of lies. Lying, lying, lying. Everybody. This is what happens in courtrooms. Attorneys lie. The person who you're up against lies. And I promise you, I've been in front of magistrates and family advocates and social workers who lie. This happens. People stand there in a courtroom under oath and just lie.
Under oath? Oath of God? Have you guys forgotten that the law comes from God? That means you're lying to God, in God, with God's process, words, whatever you want to call it. Are you insane? Do you have any idea what that means for you and your family? You are lying to God, to Jesus. Are you insane? Do you know what that's going to bring on this city and on your family and on your institution and your lineage and this country? This has to stop.
So now I've explained to you in great details many of the reasons why this matter has been postponed. And so far, not one of them has been at my request or because of me. And in fact, the moves and legal tactics they keep pulling is showing up with different attorneys and having a different story every time. So the one time they threw in this lady, because now apparently his attorney was not available, and they wanted to postpone to bring her up to speed. The next time they say, no, it can't work like that. She can't take over. It's this guy's case. We have to set a date now that he's available.
To come and set a date.
Do you understand all the contradictions here? Then eventually, I get legal aid on board because even though I indicated that I was ready to proceed and fine to speak for myself, because I've had it up to here and am sick and tired of all the lies and postponements and delays and people not keeping their word and the injustice. I'm just sick of all of it. And I said, can we just get on with it? I'm ready to proceed. I will speak for myself.
Does she sound confused? No. Can you hear how Nelmary's language has changed over 4 years? She is a very soft-hearted empath who works most gently with everything she can, never had a speeding ticket in her life. She hasn't even broken a plate in my house on purpose or by accident. And look how her language has warped due to her having to fight for her and her child's right survival. She's speaking like a lawyer, and she's not confused. And these professionals, these high and mighties, who are lying to God, are doing this to her and others all around the country, but especially sickening and bad in Humansdorp, Jeffreys Bay, and also Port Elizabeth. St. Francis here included. It goes as far as it's even in the Cape. Don't think Cape Town, the Western Cape, is exempt from this. There was a particular bad case in Rustenburg that I helped out with. One in Durban as well. Sickening, evil stuff. People, we have to get this to stop. It's going to come down on all of us and our children. I'm not saying it, I'm not threatening it. Go read it in the Bible. And even just logically, you can see this is going to come down hard. It's already hurt a lot of people, a lot of children. Even children found dead. We have the evidence, it's coming. But first we're going to help. You guys are in a lot of trouble. And one way or another, this is going to get sorted out quick, fast. Not 5 years from now, not 6 months from now. I am so from the bottom of my heart, as a man in this country, sorry to the single parents and especially the single women who have had to carry this for more than a decade. 10 years. Some, because of the legal only one help at a time rule thing when you get legal aid or legal assistance, not your own private attorney. Some have had to choose between their food and their children, and some have had to choose between their individual and collective children. Imagine having to choose between you and your child eating, or being forced to choose between your children. And not because of anything you did, but because strangers who lies, who have ambitions, evil ambitions, came and took your child. Just took them. This is allowed. This is happening.
It's not allowed.
It's not
They're
allowed.
just getting away with it.
Thank you. Men, sir, he is groot fout. This is evil.
Okay. So, then the next time, because this female attorney that was thrown in at the last minute to come in there in a hustle and look all, everyone must now feel sorry for her because she was given this case at the last minute and she looked like she'd been up all night reading. The matter was postponed, right? And then the next time the matter was postponed, this is what I want to say. I'm getting back to my point. So, even though I indicated that I was happy to speak for myself and proceed, since the magistrate was going to postpone anyway, at her request, for fairness and justice for her to have time to prepare.
Not for the children, not for the abuse, not for Miss Bradshaw.
And not at my request, as was lied to now the last time by this male attorney.
No, the molested children can just wait. Just wait. Just chill. Yeah.
Then I was advised by the maintenance officer in front of the magistrate still while the postponement was being discussed that if it's going to be postponed anyway, he suggests that I try to get legal assistance through either legal aid or the law clinic because they really want me to be represented. And so this happens every time. Most magistrates don't want to hear the case if an attorney is not present. They prefer for you to have an attorney. Okay? It's not what I want always.
One magistrate said the case is valid and she will rule on it, but not on Nell Marie's papers. She cannot speak for herself. She must go get an attorney to redo it, make it simpler for her to understand. Make it simpler for her to understand, and then she will make the ruling, because there is something wrong. Do you know how many times Nell Marie has been told that? There's a problem. We see there's a problem, but we're just going to kick the can down the road. And your child must just wait, and you must just follow the law. You must be a law-abiding citizen. While everyone around you is breaking the law and your child has been injured in a horrible way. And you must sit and wait for these bigwigs. Mense, daar's fout hier, hoor.
Okay, so because it was being postponed anyway, and by a lengthy period, to give this female lady, attorney that came at the last minute, enough time to familiarize herself with the case and consult with Mr. Bradshaw and take over from the previous attorney, I was then advised that it would be in my best interest to get legal aid. And we actually drove straight from the courthouse to legal aid. And I went and did exactly as they said on that day and applied for legal aid. Right? Because I'm not the one that's wanting the constant postponements and delays. I did what they asked me to do immediately. Literally the same day. And it was my birthday. I remember now. It was my birthday. The matter was postponed again. I was not given the 4 years of debt owed to me. And I was told to go get an attorney. And so what did we do? We didn't go out for supper. We didn't go buy birthday gifts. I didn't get to see my daughter. Nothing that a normal person does. I went to legal aid and sat and waited and waited and waited.
In pain, injured?
To be helped after I had just been to court. And this is a regular theme for us, by the way. We once spent Mr. LaRue's entire birthday at a police station while I was being interviewed by a colonel about all the police misconduct.
We promised her safety.
This is how we spend our lives. For what? Because nothing's changed. I still don't have that maintenance. Anyway.
Or her child. Can't speak to her child, can't see her child. Just taken.
So, I went and applied for legal aid. The next time we arrived at court, after my legal aid application had been successful, and I'd consulted with my attorney, and we got to court, guess what? The firm that Mr. Bradshaw uses for his attorneys yet again sent a different attorney. That little scatterbrained young female that came to get them 2 postponements was not there. And the original attorney that's supposed to be handling the matter, not there. In fact, I didn't even recognize or realize who the attorney was until we went into court, because I'd never seen him. It was a new person. And now remember, previously, when the private attorney I hired that withdrew indicated that she wanted to submit a supplementary affidavit. The original male attorney that is so cocky and lies in court, he said no, he's going to argue it, he does not consent. We need to argue it in front of the magistrate and then she must decide.
En jy, Pel, jy is jonk, wit en Afrikaans. Jy's 'n laaitie. Daar's 'n klein dogtertjie wat seer gemaak is. En jy kom staan en praat kak in die hof en probeer haar ma intimideer voor die hof begin. Jy moet pas op. Because I was taught by my father to control my temper as best I can, and my grandfather warned me about murder. And the Bible warns about murder. But one day you guys are going to bite off more than you can chew, which I think you've already done anyway. If I consider who's inbound for this city, who's coming to help sort this out. Jy, laaitie. Daar's 'n klein dogtertjie wat agter hierdie ma staan.
Who we've not seen in a year. We don't actually know what she looks like anymore.
Fucking swakkeling, snotneus, rietrug. Swakkeling.
So this attorney previously, remember, said no, he's going to argue that because they wanted another postponement, so they wanted to draw it out. So they wanted to first argue it, and then the magistrate, after the arguments, must decide if she will allow a supplementary affidavit. Now when they arrive, after yet another postponement, they arrive with this new attorney, because now not one of the previous attorneys on the case is apparently available. All of a sudden, the story's changed, and I'm informed by my legal aid attorney that they're not going to argue it, that she can just request from the magistrate if she'll allow it, and then we can proceed. So now the story's changed again, and the attorney's changed again. That magistrate, once again, firstly, allowed the supplementary affidavit, and we postponed to a date that suited this original male attorney's diary, because he's the one on the case. So a date was made that he's available. So now I don't know what happened to this whole story of the female lady taking over and her needing time to familiarize herself with the case. You can see that was an obvious tactic to postpone, because Mr. Bradshaw's desperate to not pay all this money to me.
And they all are desperate not to be found out. Maar daai koel is deur die kerk. That train has left the station because other people from bigger cities are already helping. That's the problem with you small town folk. You think because you run your town, you run the world. Others are coming.
So now all of a sudden, everyone's just forgotten about those previous postponements and this lady who needed time to prepare. And a date is being finalized according to the original attorney's diary. And I was told by my legal aid attorney that the magistrate is not happy with how long this has been dragging on and how many postponements there has been. She wants to finalize and get this done. So the postponement that was granted was for like 2 months or something. It was more than enough time. And in that time, what was supposed to happen is my legal aid attorney was supposed to submit her affidavit. A date was set that she was supposed to file it on, to give the other side, Mr. Bradshaw's attorneys, more than enough time to oppose or hand in more papers or arguments or whatever. The whole process of everyone going backwards and forwards in terms of applications and arguments and paperwork, that was all supposed to happen in those 2 months. So that by the time everyone comes to court, which was now last Wednesday, by the time everyone comes to court, we are ready to argue, because all the backwards and forwards between the attorneys has happened. It's done. So it was set down for final argument by who? By that magistrate. Did she again indicate in any way, shape or form that it was the original magistrate that wants to hear the matter? No, it was not said formally in court, not in front of me, not to me. The maintenance officer didn't raise it, and the magistrate didn't raise it, and none of the attorneys present on that day raised it. So that attorney that they sent from the firm, Gravensteins, that day, he didn't say that either. On record that day, what happened was, it's set for final arguments. It's been more than a year. Next time everyone comes to court, this matter's being settled and argued. Two months later, we arrived to court. And their little strategy and plan that they came up with to try and delay yet again, because Mr. Bradshaw does not want to pay this money or have his things taken or go to prison. is that they're now going to make up some story that apparently the original magistrate wants to hear the matter, when that's not what has been said or on record for months now. So that's a complete lie. And my attorney did not correct him.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This magistrate couldn't be reached on the day she was allegedly on leave after allegedly being in criminal court, but then couldn't be found, and then was found out to be on leave because apparently the whole new law court is now on leave because they've been told in a month's time all the leave will expire, so now everyone has taken leave, and meantime the children must wait. Why couldn't they WhatsApp her or phone her?
Because she's on leave and she's entitled to her leave.
No, I understand that. I'm not an idiot.
No, that's the answer we were given it by the magistrate in court.
So now this magistrate who is affecting people's lives, children's lives, cannot be reached at all. Has she fallen off the face of the earth?
To verify a simple fact.
Hi, can we proceed, yes or no? Are we? Bye.
You make a very good point that someone could have just called or texted her.
But they can communicate when they want to get stuff done, when they want to arrest you for nothing, when they want to assault you, when they want to take your stuff, when they want to make you pay.
The point of this is that I want to explain also is that what you must understand as someone who doesn't have experience, has not been dealing with this on a day-to-day basis for years. If you're new, if you're wanting to get divorced, or if you need help with maintenance or your child or anything, if you're new approaching the court for help, what I'm wanting you to understand is how attorneys lie.
Well, that's not a secret.
And how the stories keep changing and the rules keep changing. And what I want to point out is that often it has felt to me when I walk into that courtroom like a complete setup. That is what it feels like. When you sit there and you watch the way everyone talks and communicates, and the absurdity of the things they are saying that doesn't make sense, and that's obvious lies, and how the stories change. When you sit there and you watch and you experience it, it's almost like you're at a drama, like theater. It honestly feels as if before the time, behind closed doors, people spoke, decided what they were going to do, what they were going to say, what the plan is for the day. Literally, lines get rehearsed. That is what it feels like. Because you feel like you're sitting in the twilight zone. Because it's real, it's reality. You're sitting in a courtroom. But the acting and the way they speak is so absurd. It feels like that. It feels like a big act. It feels like a show.
And I'm not saying that it feels like that. I'm saying it is that. It is that. If you study human behavior, micro expressions, personality traits, and you just watch them quietly,
because you walk in there and you watch everyone and you listen, you cannot believe your eyes and ears. You felt like you've been hit by a bus. You cannot believe what just happened, because what was agreed upon the last time and what was supposed to happen legally within the law is so far removed from this show everyone is putting on that you cannot bring these two things together. There's a clear disconnect. It's not reality. It's not spontaneous.
The only thing that's moving is a lot of money, children being hurt, gone missing, and some killed, law-abiding citizens attacked and imprisoned as warnings of some sort. It is. It's not it seems, it is. And we've recorded everything.
Yeah, I'm just choosing my words carefully.
Man, you know what? That's part of the problem. This Poppy Act and NDAs and stuff. This is all tools they use to silence the innocent, the victims. Yeah, the innocent and the victims. People, this cannot continue. It needs to be addressed by those that care about the future of this country and the children and our children and their children and the other children. This is evil. It's not just bad or naughty or a business dealing where, you know, two building sites are having an argument and the sites, you know, the site managers are doing deals and whatnot. There's not bricks involved here. People and children. This is evil.
Okay. I want to take one more body break. Okay. And then what I'm going to suggest is I want to try and wrap it up because it's been very long.
Doesn't matter if it's long. I want you to get it out.
Yes, but like I'm needing food and stuff. Sure. Like we need to take a proper break. Okay. And so what I want to suggest is I want to then, after this body break, try and get through my notes here because I'm kind of discussing within a certain theme.
Okay.
Of the courts.
Okay, let's take a break and you can wrap it up afterwards.
Okay.
Okay, let me just pause.
Okay, so I want to try and wrap up by going through my notes because, as I mentioned, the idea of the kind of theme I had for today was not to really go into too much personal details for my cases. That is an entirely separate matter with way too much that we can start addressing in a separate episode as I feel it's appropriate. But due to so many cases currently being in court, I didn't want to harp on too much of the personal details. The theme for today that I had in mind was what happens in court. I want to just explain to people what actually happens every time you go to court. And I can't speak for other people. We would love for other people to come on here and share their experiences.
Some want to, but it's dangerous. They've been threatened by courts.
Yes. But so my theme for today is just all the happenings and procedures and absurdities of how you get into this situation, because people struggle to understand and they think the law just gets applied, and it doesn't work like that. So that's kind of my theme, and so I want to get through my notes here. So I did mention that one of the things that I find frustrating is this option that is put in front of you to either represent yourself without an attorney, where you then can speak, or, but then remember what I said feels disempowering, is that you don't fully know the law and you can be taken advantage of and your case can be dismissed because you can't properly argue the merits and you don't know what the magistrates are looking for and the applications you do is not in the format they want and things like that. So you run the risk of having your applications dismissed, which is extremely frustrating because then that gets used against you in other matters. Like I said, in the divorce, it was used against me that my protection orders were dismissed, saying they don't have merit, when that's not the case. I didn't have an attorney. But then, if you decide to go with an attorney, you're not allowed to speak. So unless you can trust that person 100% and they know everything, and you feel like they are speaking accurately for you and really have your back, what happens is you get misrepresented. And it's so horrible sitting in court hearing everyone speak to each other, hearing the lies, and you want to jump out of your seat and say, no, that's not true, but you can't. And everyone's just lying. And so, yes, you have the benefit of someone who knows the law, but only if you can actually trust them and they represent you properly and they advocate for you and they fight for you. Otherwise, all they do is also misrepresent you and create more problems than solutions. And so it feels like this situation where you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And it's very, very difficult to make that decision for the different cases. And I just wanted to point that out. Then, one of the things that happened during our divorce, and I think I did touch on this in previous videos, but I want to point it out because I'm not sure if what happened since, if I made that connection. So when my daughter was first taken by her father with an ex parte, and for those of you who don't know, ex parte, ex means without, not ex, like not. Parte is the other part, because in court there are two parties. So the one part of the two parties is not there, not heard, because it's an urgent application that's supposed to only be used in emergencies if there is severe danger, life-threatening, life or limb-threatening. Okay? Those are the only situations that an ex parte should be entertained. And yet Mr. Bradshaw has had about 3 or 4 of them granted at Humansdorp, which is highly unusual and not legal. Okay? But that's how my daughter was first taken, so I wasn't involved. I wasn't allowed to speak. I was ex parte.
She still to this day has not been allowed to speak on that matter. They have never ever allowed her in the courtroom to come defend herself and her child on those very first lies when they took her child.
Okay. So my point is, when that happened, I was advised by clerks of the court that I explained what was going on in Humansdorp, and I was told to fill in a Form 2 and take it to Children's Court, and they told me what to do. Between the court manager and other clerks, we were asking around, and they pretended to help, and they told me what to do. And so I go to the trouble of printing and making copies of all the supporting evidence and annexures I need. I make an affidavit, I fill in the form, go to the police, get everything stamped. I go to the court clerk of the Children's Court with my application, and I want to give it to her. Now, this is not the clerk that we've been dealing with lately. I just want to make that clear. I cannot remember the lady's name. I think I have a memory of what she looks like. It was a different lady. It was not the current court clerk. This was in 2023. When I went to the Children's Court to submit this application, she said to me, "I cannot take it from you. A social worker has to hand it in. You cannot hand in an application to Children's Court by yourself in your own personal capacity without a social worker." That's what she said to me. Now, the reason for bringing this up is because it was a complete lie, and I didn't know that at the time. Because about a year or so later, when Mr. Bradshaw was withholding my daughter from me despite court orders, and I had not seen her for 4 months, and again I was desperate for assistance, and I approached the Children's Court clerk, the one that I'm currently dealing with. She advised me that I can apply to access my parental rights because there is a court order with my contact rights, but he's just not adhering to it. And so the correct thing is to do an urgent application to access my parental rights. And that court clerk assisted me with that application and took it to the magistrate. So now, either you can bring an application by yourself, or you can't and you need a social worker. They can't both be true at the same time. Do you understand this? This is an obvious, blatant lie. So what happened initially when my daughter was first kidnapped, that lady who refused to take my application, that said she cannot take it, it needs to be handed in by a social worker, she lied. Because I have since also come to know by research that within the court rules, the clerk of the children's court cannot refuse any application. From my research that I've done, as I understand it now, if I understand correctly, is that the rules say a clerk cannot refuse an application, she has to receive it. It's then for the magistrate to decide if it has validity and how to proceed or not proceed. But she has to accept the application. It has to be filed. It has to be submitted.
It makes sense because it's for the best interest and safety of the child. Any and all must be considered, even if it's not true. It needs to be looked at because of the child. That's how it should be. There's a big problem here, people.
Okay, so it's not for a clerk to decide, and it's not true that a social worker needs to hand it in. That was a complete lie by whoever stood in front of me that day at Humansdorp in 2023 in May when my daughter was kidnapped.
I remember the day. It was an African lady, a black African lady. We're all African ladies, sorry, apologies. It was a black lady, and she had a friend sitting next to her, a colleague, and most of the other clerks in that office was there, all standing at their desk with big eyes, staring at this clerk, refusing to take these documents from Miss Bradshaw.
Okay, so at the time I didn't know this. 4 years later, and lots of research has made me smarter and made me realize that that was a lie. Okay? So that lady, along with many other officials at Humansdorp Court, who has lied for the past 4 years and not followed lawful procedure, is liable for what has happened to my daughter the last 4 years. I just want to point that out. And I just wanted to clearly state on record the contradictions in how I've been received and treated and what's been possible and what's been allowed and not allowed to happen in terms of applications and court and how things work, because the story keeps changing depending on who's standing in front of you, which court you are in, for what. It keeps changing.
They all know and they're all doing it, and the small amount of angels in between that are still trying to do their job are holding this whole big mess just up. It's going to crack. These people need help, and the victims need help, because they all know and they're all playing this game. It's racketeering and it's organized crime.
Okay, so the next point I want to make is, I then explained to you that a year or two later, when Mr. Bradshaw was not letting me see my daughter, despite a valid contact order in place, then I was assisted by the clerk without a social worker to hand in an application.
Quickly, without question, without hesitation.
On the same day.
As if it was just day-to-day run-of-the-mill things.
But then, and this is still at Humansdorp, but then I was told that the magistrate gave feedback that she does not have jurisdiction to entertain this case and hear it because our divorce had not been finalized. So what happened was...
Sorry, pause. Sorry, that was friends that were arriving.
Okay, so the magistrate apparently said she cannot hear the matter, she cannot receive the application, she does not have jurisdiction because my divorce is not finalized. Because the matter is currently in divorce court, it has to be dealt with by the magistrate presiding over the divorce. So, she does not have jurisdiction, she can't hear it. Okay, that was the feedback I was given, and they even wanted me to sign a paper and I refused. Bear that in mind. So firstly, we have the discrepancy between the two incidents, where once I was told I need a social worker and they refused to take my application, but the second time they did assist me without a social worker and they took the application. Now we come to the next discrepancy. Magistrate says she doesn't have jurisdiction because our divorce is not finalized. Okay. Fast forward. This was, I think, this was either December 2024 or January 2025. It was during the time that Mr. Bradshaw was not letting me see Ariel despite my court orders. Fast forward to 2026. And some other mothers and victims start reaching out to us. And we start speaking and comparing stories. And the one mother explains to me that after 6, almost 7 years, she's still not divorced. Because, why? Because of her matters in children's court. So everything regarding her child and the abuse allegations and everything that was going on in her case was heard in children's court. Where? Humansdorp. And they told her that because of the children's court matters and the criminal matters and everything that was going on, they couldn't finalize her divorce until it was settled. So 7 years later, she's not divorced because of her children's court matters. Now make this make sense. Because there was divorce filings, that's how this all started, just like my case. A divorce started. Then custody becomes disputed. Allegations get thrown around between partners in terms of domestic violence and abuse. And so then matters go to protection orders and criminal matters and children's court. Oh wait, her matter was in children's court and has been in children's court for the last 6 to 7 years and has in fact delayed her divorce being finalized. So now I ask you, what is correct? Because they cannot both be true at the same time, yet again. Either you can access the children's court for relief and matters regarding children and their safety on an urgent basis while getting divorced, or you can't. But they cannot both be true at the same time. So yet again, someone is lying. So if the rule stands, then all her children's court matters are invalid and illegal and should never have happened. Or if it's not the case, then I was lied to that I couldn't access the children's court while I'm being divorced before it's finalized. Do you see what I'm trying to say here? How the story keeps changing. But these things cannot both be true at the same time. And depending on who you go to, where you go to, for what reason, what court, what matter, who's trying to get help.
Even the hospitals and victim rape centers dedicated allegedly to helping people make your files disappear and say you were never there, even though you have appointment cards, recordings, and appointments.
Okay, so you get told a different story, a different rule, a different procedure, a different law everywhere you go, which doesn't make sense. It can't be that way. Okay, Next. I've explained to you the frustration with a divorce and what's been happening in maintenance court and with protection orders, that the magistrates keep rotating, that every time you come you're in front of a different magistrate, and it's so frustrating because you feel like you can't make progress. No one knows what's going on because no one knows what happened the previous time, and they don't want to read the file and there's no context, right? And what the maintenance officer was pointing out now in the last court appearance, the argument that Mr. Bradshaw's attorneys wanted to make, that the previous magistrate must or should hear the matter, that it's in the interest of justice because she has the history of the case, because she granted the order, right? So now his attorneys want to argue that point, that it's in the interest of justice for the magistrate who granted the order to hear the matter for context and accuracy. Now they want it, right? Because they want to get away with the maintenance. But when we were doing our divorce, as mentioned, for the first few years, we were constantly, every time, in front of a different magistrate. By the time the matter was set down for trial and the trial started, they could not swap magistrates anymore because the trial was part heard. So for day 1 of trial, day 2 of trial, day 3 of trial, where Mr. Bradshaw had to testify and then get cross-examined by my attorney, and then I had to testify. That's how far we got with that. It was all in front of the same magistrate because you needed to keep accuracy, context, history. Someone needs to follow what's going on and know what's going on in order to rule justly, fairly, accurately. Okay, the matter was part heard. Then the divorce got paused because I was pregnant and had to give birth. Then when the proceedings restarted in January 2025, Mr. Bradshaw had in the meantime,
Maria out.
Mr. Bradshaw had in the meantime served me with more ex partes while I was pregnant, giving birth and breastfeeding a new baby. This is how he attacked me. That I was threatened that I have to be in court for this ex parte served on me, or I will go to jail, I will get arrested. I have to be in court, even though I'm in a different city, because our baby has
needed specialized care.
Yes.
Move on.
Yes. So, then court proceedings start up again, and now this ex parte has to be dealt with, that he filed in the meantime while the divorce was supposed to be on pause. And when we arrive to court, guess what? It's not the same magistrate that's handling the divorce, that has heard 3 days of trial, that has the proper history, context, and knowledge, that has heard Mr. Bradshaw lie in court, that knows my attorney, that knows what's been happening. Okay? And now it's been about 3 years, so the file is again this thick. And now there's a new magistrate sitting there, needing to rule over and preside and make decisions for interlocutory proceeding, an interlocutory application. That means a temporary thing that's now inserted into this mess before the trial carries on. And that Magistrate Dixon, said on record in court in front of everyone to hear, I have not read the file. I do not know what is going on. How? How is it legal for a completely different magistrate to sit there when a divorce is part heard, currently in trial, not concluded, and now she's just going to rule over this interim matter until the trial proceeds in front of the proper magistrate, when she's got no context of what's going on. And this is supposed to be legal and just and fair. That doesn't make any sense. I don't think it was legal for her to have handled that application, considering the divorce was part heard.
And we never saw that magistrate again who presided over 3 days of trial for the divorce. And in that 3 days, Mr. Bradshaw indicated on record, so it's recorded, that black women, like which the judge was at that time, he called maids. And then that black woman judge was replaced by a white woman judge, Dixon. And we all know about Dixon because wherever you go in PE or Kucha, everybody says, yeah, well, Dixon comes with her own basket of issues. That is the magistrate that is deciding over these matters and the life of a child and children and innocent women, with her buddies and racketeering friends and Mr. Bradshaw calling black women maids in open court. And then all this happens while we are fighting for our daughter's life in Cape Town. And we come back to an ambush, after being ambushed in Cape Town as well by another task force with another ex parte full of lies.
So, the point is, when it suited Mr. Bradshaw and his attorney for their narrative for what they wanted to achieve, it was in their best interest to have a magistrate preside over an interim proceeding that had no context and history and is not the magistrate for the divorce. Why? Because Mr. Bradshaw had been caught lying and the divorce had been going well in my favor in terms of the truth coming out and all Mr. Bradshaw's lies and his attorney's lies.
It was really bad and embarrassing. It was pathetic.
So now when it's not in their favor, because their lies are being exposed and it's going terribly for them in court, they were fine with a new magistrate coming on that had not read the file and making court orders that decide the life and best interest of a little girl. Okay? But now when it comes to money, and because they're trying to delay and it's not suiting their agenda, now they say no, they don't want a new magistrate to hear the matter. They want the magistrate that has the history of the matter. Again, they can't be both true at the same time. And what is the law here regarding this issue? Because it's being enforced differently in different courts for different reasons by different people and doesn't make sense. And it's not lawful and ethical for it to be like that. And I did point this out in a previous video, but I'll just say it again. When I was in court in front of that magistrate that had told me she had not read the file and doesn't know what's going on, she was making court orders, deciding my and my daughter's life and schedule, what schedule we have to follow to see each other.
And she previously had said she can't make court orders.
That's what I'm getting to.
Oh, sorry.
Then, when I found out about Mr. Bradshaw abusing my daughter or someone in his house or someone at her school, we don't know for sure, but that's why it needed to be investigated. But someone hurt her, of that much we are sure. Okay? And when I brought that evidence to court, and I brought the evidence, or I asked for assistance for an order to be amended, because Mr. Bradshaw was still not paying maintenance, and I was struggling to afford to take my daughter to school, and I wanted permission to homeschool her. Then she said to me, she cannot just amend and change court orders. She doesn't have the authority to amend and change court orders. But then when I left and I wasn't present, because I tried to go find help and figure out what the proper laws and procedures are, because every time I go, it's a different story, a different law, a different procedure, a different person, a different magistrate. It's just whatever the hell they want to do on that day. And so no one can make sense of what the law is and what's actually going on, and no one will help me because they just do what they want to suit them, right? So then I say, okay, I've reported you guys to the LPC. I'm going to a high court. I'm going to find help for my daughter. I'm going to find someone to listen to me. I'm going to find out what the hell the correct laws are and who enforces them. Then when I'm not present, she changes court orders and takes away my contact rights.
And divorces you in your absence.
But that was not her.
Well,
but then yes, the next thing is they then proceeded with the divorce in my absence, even though it was part heard. And I was not there, neither was my attorney.
All her rights stripped away, all costs of the case on
So,
Marie, everything.
I'm not wanting to get into all the details. The point is the contradictions, the lies, the discrepancies. That doesn't make sense. It can't just be whatever the hell suits one party on that day. The laws and the way they get enforced and the rules and procedures need to be consistent and applied fairly, and it doesn't work like that. Okay. The other thing that happened is, when my daughter was originally taken, and no one could assist us properly because whoever we asked for assistance at Humansdorp Court, all the different clerks, prosecutors, magistrates, whoever we spoke to, everyone gave me a different story, right? And eventually, we found out who the magistrate was that signed the order. And we found out that she was not at Humansdorp. She actually works at Port Elizabeth Court. We drove all the way to Port Elizabeth Court to go see her. When we found her, she was so shocked. She went so pale. She couldn't believe that I was in front of her, because Mr. Bradshaw had lied and said I was hospitalized and incapable of taking care of my daughter, which I wasn't. I was in an accident, yes, but I was on crutches in front of her asking her for help. And she reprimanded me, saying to me that it is unethical and illegal for me to approach her by myself without the other parties present. But is that not the very definition of an ex parte which she granted?
And then she told me that I mustn't speak and I must wait outside because she knows all about me. She's read about me.
The point I'm trying to make is again the contradiction, the discrepancy that doesn't make sense. Because you cannot reprimand me for approaching you and asking for help when you made an order based on an application where you didn't know my side of the story or hear my voice.
To this day.
Where the other party was not present. And then I come to you because you granted this order. And you say to me, it's illegal and unethical. I cannot approach you without the other parties present. But that's exactly what they did. So either it is legal or it's not. Either it is ethical or it's not. They cannot both be true at the same time. This is what I'm trying to point out. Because it keeps happening over and over and over again.
And then she says to you, I have children. I understand. You should listen to me. Blah, blah, blah.
Okay, I think I did point out the fact that maintenance court, divorce court, children's court, family court for domestic violence, and protection orders and harassment orders, all these courts are separate. They operate separately, which means they have different magistrates. You have to hand in a separate application. It gets handled as a separate matter, which means you need a different attorney. And if legal aid is helping you with one thing, they cannot help you with all the other things. And so in a divorce, it doesn't make sense and it's not fair. This is what I'm trying to point out. If there are any officials listening, The system needs to be looked at. It doesn't work. Because you cannot give legal aid to a mother for one thing and not help her with everything else and think that she is being treated fairly and her children are being protected. It's just not the case.
They know this now, Marie. They know this. You're just making it public. They know this. You all know this because I watch you. And your eyes and your micro expressions don't lie, and your twitching and your nervousness and the bullshit you spew. You all know. But when are you all going to grow up and fix this?
So, besides the fact that if you don't have a private attorney and you're accessing state assistance, legal aid, that you are left vulnerable and exposed in all your other matters. And so that doesn't work. You're not actually helped and protected, and you're not fair. Besides that, the point that I wanted to make clear is that every magistrate you come in front of does not have the history of the divorce. If you're in maintenance court, they don't know what's going on in divorce court. If you're in divorce court, they don't know what's going on in domestic violence.
You've made this point more than once.
Okay, so that doesn't work, and the attorneys exploit that gap. And they present only the facts that suit them to the magistrate, or above and beyond that, they go and lie and commit perjury, which is a crime. And that's how they get away with the things they get away with.
They're not going to get away with it. You're not going to get away with it. Not in this life or the next, especially in the next. Do you understand that you're heading to hell? Yes, you are. There are certain things that go beyond anything that's written about forgiveness and all that. You're going to hell. You're up against God. What does that mean? You are mad if you think you're going to get away with this.
Okay, the other point I wanted to make was that it came out during a protection order matter that Mr. Bradshaw told the court that we had been in children's court, and I was profusely arguing with the magistrate because he wanted to refer the matter back to children's court when I wanted to raise the concerns about the abuse. He wanted to refer the matter back to children's court, and I was arguing with him saying that you cannot refer a matter back to somewhere it never was. And so it came out because by my understanding, we had only been in divorce court for the last 4 years because I was denied access to children's court, as I have mentioned, for various reasons over and over, and we had never been in children's court. But it came then to my attention in court because Mr. Bradshaw was saying that he had been at children's court. And so again, this is illegal and unlawful because how did he take a matter to children's court without me present? They had to subpoena me or summon me or notify me somehow, either his attorneys or the court. And I received nothing from his attorneys or a subpoena from the court or sheriff. No one notified me. No one gave me a date. And whatever happened there, if there were court orders made, no one sent it to me. And that's not legal because I'm my daughter's biological mother with full parental rights, and so they had to notify me. I had to be given the opportunity to be there. And so to this day, I've not been able to find out what application he brought, when, in front of what magistrate, where, and what happened. And so either he's lying or it happened, which is illegal, and still no one's shared these details with me. All the while I repeatedly was denied access to the children's court. Now, I think we must pause there for now because I've not gotten to the happenings of the most recent protection orders, what happened in the court dates, and the 2 court appearances of children's court, And I want to get into that, but that's going to make this video very long, and we've not eaten for the past 3.5 hours.
No, we're going to do a second episode.
Yes.
The point was to communicate this to other people.
Yes, and so it was part of my original plan to go through an update of all the recent court dates, but it's now getting
Okay. It's enough now.
So the children's court and protection orders will be discussed in the next episode.
And the fraud, financial fraud, court admin fraud, and lots of other thingies that have been going on that you guys think we don't know about.
But I think you get the idea of all the lies and discrepancies and corruption and things that just don't make sense, and how you can't have a rule applying here. Okay.
There are children.
It's not justice.
Okay. There are children underneath this mess, people. Daar is kinders onder hierdie hoop stront. There are children, many, multiple children under this pile of crap. Children, little ones, tiny little kids,